Okay, well, it is 7 o'clock and it is Tuesday, October 27th. And this is the regular meeting of the Common Council of the City of Platteville. And tonight we are hosting and holding this meeting via Zoom. Adam, are you in this council chambers?
Yep, it's me and Doug.
Okay, so there's only you and Doug in the council chambers. Okay, so the majority of people who have joined us then are joining us by Zoom. So Candace, we'll start with roll call.
All right. Isaac Shanley,
Yes.
Eileen Nichols,
Yes.
Kathy Kopp,
Here.
Jason Arts,
Here.
Barbara Doss,
Here.
Ken Killian,
Here.
Robin Klein.
Here.
Okay, before we start with the public hearing tonight, I would be remiss if I didn't reach out and say a big thank you to Candace and the clerk's office and city staff for their organization of advanced voting or absentee voting in the council chambers. I did that myself yesterday. It's a very smooth process, thanks, Candace, to you and your staff, the people who have assisted you. Also, I want to reinforce that the Ward 3 or Area 3 that I represent is at the university, and the university will be opening the Velzy Commons for voting for those people who live in this district. All other people will vote at the Brodsky Center rather than the Armory. There will be drive-through voting at the Brodsky Center. There will not be drive-through voting for the ward that votes at the university. And there is a kind of a change in how voting is done at the university. All entrance will be into the Velzy Commons and out of the Velzy Commons. So all of those doors on Hickory Street, the whole big string of doors will be open for people to go in, and exit will be under the canopy at the very northwest corner of the building. So it'll be one-way traffic through. And Candace, do you have anything else you want to say about that?
So yes, and I appreciate all those announcements. As far as the Velzy Commons entrance, we will have an ADA compliant entrance, as those main larger doors, there are stairs when you first go in. So we'll have this all signed, so it will be clear for people when they show up. But yes, the biggest announcement is that District 3 will report to Velzy Commons, which is located within the Alsvik building, which is probably a name that people are more familiar with when it comes to voting in District 3, which is that building on the corner of Hickory and Main. We've used it in the past, so it's the same area. We're just directing traffic a little bit differently because of COVID. So, and I just wanted to thank you very much for acknowledging our in-person absentee voting. I wanted to say that Colette worked very, very hard on that, and it has been a very smooth process. She kind of had that in the works before I came back from my maternity leave, so we need to definitely take our hats off to her. She's done a great job with that. It's allowed me to focus a little bit more on the election on the big day, which I'm actually a little further in the agenda going to ask for your forgiveness for not having the minutes done, as I'm getting pulled away to do election tasks, but we can talk about that when we get there.
Okay, and I did get an alert today on my phone, and perhaps others did too.
Yes.
Candace is still recruiting volunteers, or well, actually they're kind of paid volunteers, not. There is some payment that goes along with being a poll worker, and you are short yet poll workers at both locations?
Yes, so we have the Velzy Commons location, District 3, and then we have the Broski Center, which is in conjunction with the outside, the drive-through voting. And we are still looking for people for both of those locations. We're getting closer and closer each day, but it would be nice too, just to kind of have a little cushion, a little wiggle room. Extra people are definitely not going to be turned away. We do pay $9 an hour for these positions, but if a good point was brought up that people who are needing volunteer hours are having a hard time finding it right now because of COVID. So we certainly will allow you to volunteer as well. So we just appreciate the help.
Okay, so any questions, Candace, should be directed to you at the city office. Do you want to give an email address and or a phone number?
Sure. So the phone number at my office is 608-348-1823. And the email's very easy. It's just cityclerk@platteville.org.
Okay, so thank you again, Candace. All right.
Thank you.
Let us move on to item number 3 on our agenda tonight, which is a public hearing on a planned unit development proposed at the Platteville Golf and Country Club, 6729 Highway 80 North. And we'll start with staff presentation.
Okay, so yes, this is a request from the Platteville Golf and Country Club. They would actually like to receive approval to do a development on a portion of their property. So this will be a multi-step approval process. It is a planned unit development because they're looking for multiple structures on the property. So that process by itself is typically done in 2 steps. There's a general development plan where they submit, as the name implies, a general idea, the use of the property, basically where the structures are going to be located, the access, the number of structures, size, so forth. And then if that step is approved, then they come back later for an additional approval of what's called the specific implementation plan. And that's basically just additional details on the project. So that's where you get into what are the buildings going to look like, actual square footages, details on utilities, possibly landscaping, those types of details. And then that gives us a chance to basically address any other details that might come up through this part of the approval can be addressed as part of the second approval. So that will be required. And then since the property now, as it sits there, is located in the township, so they would like to connect to city utilities. So in order to do that, they would have to annex part of it. So what they'll be doing is creating a approximately 1.9 acre parcel from the golf course property. So that would have to be approved by itself. A certified survey map is drawn up that gets submitted for approval. And then the annexation of that property to the city would also have to be approved. So all of that stuff is basically contingent upon this first step being approved this evening. So as far as the development itself, what they're looking at is to create some condominiums within that portion of the golf course property. Residential condominiums, they're looking at duplex structures. They would like to put up 5 buildings, so a total of 10 units. So the development would be located between the country club building itself and the highway. They would relocate the existing driveway to the country club slightly to the north. And then they'd have 3 buildings on the north side of that driveway and then 2 buildings on the south side of that driveway. So it would be the driveway, the relocated driveway would be a shared driveway between the condominiums and the golf course itself. Each condominium would have a driveway coming off of that shared driveway, and they'd each have a attached 2-car garage. As I mentioned, they would be annexing to the city to get to the city utilities, so each unit would have city water and city sanitary sewer provided. Stormwater would be handled on site. They would have some individual, most likely basically rain gardens or small detention facilities surrounding the buildings to handle that. And then, as I mentioned, the driveway would be a shared access point with the country club itself. Since that is a state highway, the relocation of that driveway would have to be approved by DOT. So we can give our approval, but that does not necessarily mean it would be approved by DOT. And if that happens, obviously that plan would have to be modified accordingly to address the access issues. So otherwise, it seems like the proposed residential in that area, it seems like a good fit. There's a mixture of different types of residential south and east of the golf course property already, so it would be a compatible use for that location. The Plan Commission did review this initial request. There was a lot of discussion about the access, the shared access, whether one access point would be adequate or not, but they did approve it with that one access point. There was also discussion about pedestrian access and possibly golf carts using getting access to the property. How's that all going to work? So those types of details can be finalized and confirmed a little bit in the second part of the approval. But the Planning Commission did recommend approval, excuse me, with several conditions. Approval of the certified survey map, as I mentioned, to create that approximately 1.9 acre parcel, which would be where the condominiums would be located. It'd be subject to annexation of that parcel. The PUD SIP would also have to be approved, and typically we do a development agreement as part of that approval, where we can basically include a lot more of the details into the approval process. They did, as I mentioned, have some discussion about the stormwater detention. So there was a discussion about whether to have one larger pond or kind of smaller individual rain gardens. There was a preference for the individual rain gardens, so that was part of their recommendation. They did approve the one driveway, but they would like to have more details on basically traffic counts, or kind of a minor traffic report that shows that the one driveway is adequate to serve the projected need. And then they would also like to see more details on internal, external connection points for pedestrians as part of this development. So whether it's a sidewalk or a multi-use path to provide some type of connection for that development. So with those conditions, the Planning Commission did recommend approval, and staff would also recommend approval. Are there any questions?
Questions of Joe, Ken?
Well, I have questions about various things. I don't know if they belong to Joe or belong to Dan Dresden.
Well, maybe we should move on to have, if Dan, are you representing the applicant?
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay, so let's, before we take questions of Joe, let's just get Dan as an applicant statement, and then we'll make the round, because maybe he'll answer some of the questions that you might have in his presentation.
Okay.
So go ahead, Dan.
Right, thank you. Dan Dresden with Delta 3 Engineering, working with the Platteville Golf and Country Club with regards to this planned unit development where they were proposing 5 buildings, as Joe mentioned, located on the west side of Water Street / State Highway 80 at the entrance of their entrance into the clubhouse there. Joe pretty much covered everything. Since the last meeting, when this was on for information, had a chance to talk with some of the members of the country club and talk about some different things. First of all, there was some concern about, this came more from the Plan Commission, about conflicts between golf carts and cars / vehicles coming into the using that same driveway. Golf carts will not be allowed in that driveway nor in the parking lot. That was something they actually implemented last year, and they're not going to allow the residents of these buildings to have a golf cart on the main driveway. If they choose to have a garage in their basement per se, then they would be able to come out and use the grass. But no golf carts would be allowed, so that would eliminate some conflicts. Talked about widening the driveway out to 30 feet. This could allow for the potential for an area to be dedicated for pedestrians. for in the case of those events where they have overflow parking necessary along Water Street / Highway 80. Someone asked, I think last time, about how many parking stalls they had in the parking lot now. Currently in their parking lot, they have 88 striped, and it's hard to tell, and not that there's always this many, but in that overflow parking area, we came up with around 32 plus or minus. We looked at there's actually an aerial photograph from 2015 when there was actually cars in that area, and there was around 20 some, and we thought, well, if they're a little bit more organized, we can get 30 some. So that puts it around 120 total parking stalls that are on site, and we'd be proposing 100 in the reconfigured parking lot. So the other 20 people would park along the driveway and or along Highway 80. And as Joe mentioned, there was also consensus from the Plan Commission about having some smaller rain gardens adjacent to each of the buildings versus a larger pond, and that's the plan to move forward with that. We've also looked at trying to lengthen out the driveways for those buildings so that they're not just 25 feet, so they're not just enough room for a couple cars for each unit, enough so that you can have 2 to 3 cars sitting outside, so that those two, let's just say that somebody has people over when there's an event so that we're not having conflict. So trying to give a little bit more storage for the residents who live there. And like as I mentioned, I think those are most of the concerns that kind of came up from the Plan Commission as well as from the council meeting last time. So.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Now we'll make the rounds. So Ken, we're starting with you. Questions of Joe and or Dan?
Well, my first one is I brought up about handicap accessibility. These condos, are they going to be, you said 2-bedroom?
Yes, that's correct.
And will they be with a basement, or they're going to be on a slab and then a second story?
They will be, right now, the plan is for them to have a basement.
There'll be a basement. And so the 2 bedrooms, will they be in the basement or upstairs, one each place, up and down, or what?
The initial discussions is that they wanted to have the 2 bedrooms on the main level, and that the basement would be kind of an open area, and the owner of the unit would be able to use that as storage, a family room, or maybe potentially, since they'd be walkouts, they could have a 3rd bedroom in the basement.
Okay. One thing that I would certainly suggest is that, of course, you have enough width to the stairways and the hallways. Our experience with renting was that we had 2 tenants that wanted to have a stair lift, and they asked us to put one in, and they paid for part of it and we paid for the rest. And so we found that this is an excellent addition. You don't have to put them in right away, but they can save you a lot of money if you're a retired person and you want to not go to a assisted living place right away. My next question is noise between the condos. How are you going to prevent noise? You have condos hooked together. How are you going to keep the noise from going from one place to the next? What is your going to be your means of preventing noise?
My thought would be that they probably have a double wall there. Typically in a duplex, they put a double wall right there at that separation point, and they have the insulation, so you'll have not just a single wall of insulation, but a double wall of insulation. I think that's kind of part of living in that type of a deal where, you know, in that common wall, you might have a little bit of noise transfer, but with that double wall, try to minimize it.
So you don't have a stud connecting between 2 places. So you have double studs.
Correct.
Okay. Next is, I'm just curious as to what the insulation is going to be as far as R value in the walls and the ceiling. What are you doing these days? Is it R20, R40 in the ceiling, or what are you doing?
That part I'm not exactly sure. They're working with Eastman Cartwright actually on the building details, and so I think when we get to the SIP, that's something that we can find out for you when they come up with their final design.
My next item is about the street terrace. How much distance is there going to be between the road and the condo? What I'm getting at is there enough room as far as plowing the snow, and so that it's not a problem as far as the condo owner, as far as ice and snow getting up on the lawn, and how much
Sure.
space you're going to have for street terrace?
Well, right now, between the edge of the curb and the 25-foot setback there, that's about 50 feet. And so we plan on having the building about 10 to 15 feet off of that setback area. So at a minimum, it'll be 60 to 65 feet off of the edge of the curb. So I would like to believe that we shouldn't have any issues with snow going back that far.
My next question is, there was talk about paths. Are these paths going to be gravel or concrete?
What we're proposing now is to widen out the driveway. So we have a 30-foot wide driveway. So we have a little bit more room for everybody to operate off of. If that's not satisfactory, then what we'll do is we'll separate that. We'll make a 24-foot driveway with a 6-foot path off the side of it. And it would more than likely be asphalt or crushed granite.
Is there going to be, I'm trying to get this, is there going to be a path along the back of these condos between the condo and the golf course, or where's the path going to be?
It'll be along the driveway so that people who are on the street don't have to walk in their backyards.
Okay. I assume there's going to be a covenant for all the condos. My next question is, there going to be a safe room as far as wind damage, tornado?
With the basement, they'll have that. They'll have the ability to go down there for storm shelter.
And then my next one is trees. Some trees are going to be saved. Are you going to protect the trees as far as driving over the roots?
Actually, a lot of the trees there on the golf course have been looking to get rid of for a while. They're very overgrown. They're the arborvitaes that have probably outlived their lifespan. So the idea was to take this opportunity to kind of clean that area up and then replant trees as necessary to get the proper trees and get the proper distance away from the home so they can survive.
And then my last one is parking. Did I hear you say there might be parking on Highway 80? Was that mentioned here at some time?
Yeah, that came up for overflow parking potentially for larger events. I think they haven't not had the need for their overflow parking as much, but in the event or in the case where they would have an event where they would have it, they would be parking along the driveway, but then they could also have the potential to park along Highway 80 if necessary. On the east side of Highway 80, there is allowed parking now, which is a side with the multi-use path currently. My
one concern about parking at 80 is I'd like to keep the parking off 80 because it is an area that has to be plowed by the city, and so fewer cars, it's going to be easier for the city staff to do the plowing.
Sure. I think, I don't know the last time the golf course had an event in the wintertime, but typically they're operating from April to October, early November, when they have their golf events, when they have a larger crowd. So that should not be an issue.
Well, my last one is, what about golf balls? Are these condos going to be situated that'll be hit by golf balls? Are they far enough away?
The intent is for them to be far enough away. Although I've hit my share of flyers before, so maybe they might want to have a little bit careful about that. But no, that's been brought into consideration, and especially the two that are on the south side of the driveway. They've talked about putting up some of that netting that they almost like they have for backstops at baseball games now, where you really can't see it, but to protect the homes. You drive around to other golf courses that have residential developments adjacent to them, And you'll see, you can tell the houses that have a tendency to get hit because you'll see some posts and some netting and stuff like that. So I think it's just one of the cons of living next to a golf course is that you might have a golf ball flying into your yard or into your house every once in a while.
Yeah, my last one is stormwater management. I assume the covenant will cover maintenance by the people.
Yes, well, it'll be by the condominium associations who will take care
Right,
of it. But
right.
yes, there will be a plan. And then with regards to the covenants, as part of the SIP, is that the covenants have to be presented for that approval.
That's all I have for now.
Thank you, Ken. Eileen, do you have questions of Joe or Dan?
I don't have a specific question. I think just the rain garden idea versus a pond is what I'll be most interested in looking at. The rest is, I think the path has been discussed and that would have been the other item. So nothing else.
Kathy, any questions of Joe or Dan?
I did have a couple, but they've all been answered. Thank you.
Jason, questions of Joe or Dan?
No additional questions.
Isaac,
No questions.
Robin, where did
I
you
don't have any
go?
questions. I'm here.
Oh, there you are. I'm just trying to find you on my screen. And I have no additional questions. So the next part of the public hearing then would be public statements in favor. I have had, as I look through the folks here, I know that many of the folks are either here for a discussion about pickleball, or some are here about the historic designation of a park. If you are interested in making a public statement in favor, please use the chat feature. The participant feature, and raise your hand. Anybody who wants to make a public statement in favor of this project, use the participant area and raise your hand. Okay, I see no hands raised to make any public statement in favor. The next part of a public hearing would then be public statements against. Again, I have had no one tell me in any other way that they want to talk about this. So if you want to make a public statement against this planned unit development, use the participant tab and raise your hand so that we can call on you. Okay, again, I see no hands raised. And the next part of a public hearing is public statements in general. We've had none in favor, we've had none against. If there's anyone who wants to make a public, just a general public statement about this proposed planned unit development of 1.9 acres, which builds 5 buildings, each that is a duplex, on Highway 80 near the golf course, please raise your hand. Okay, I see no hands raised. So the next thing on a public hearing is council discussion. So we've been around once, we'll go around again. Robin, any specific thing you want to talk about with this particular planned unit development?
I would say the presentations and conversations that happened at the Planning Commission sound pretty thorough, and I'm pretty excited to see it come to be. And I'm sure there'll be more things that come up as we talk, but I'm excited at this time.
Okay, Isaac,
No questions or comments.
Jason,
Nothing further.
Kathy,
Nothing further.
Eileen,
Nothing to add.
Ken.
No questions at this time.
Okay, nothing to add. And I would say, I would reinforce the fact that there was extensive discussion at the Plan Commission about providing a safe passageway for people who are walking into the country club from either the path on Highway 80 or from parking on Highway 80. I don't know that it would necessarily have to be someone who's parked. It could be just somebody who's walking in from Highway 80 for whatever reason. So I think that that got a lot of discussion, and I think there was a lot of support for a dedicated path for pedestrians. So since we have completed council discussion, it appears, then the next item on a public hearing agenda is closing the public hearing. That's done via motion.
I move to
I
close
would
the public hearing.
I would second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ken and a second by Eileen. Close the public hearing. Candace will vote.
Shanley,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Cop,
Yes.
Hartz,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes,
Klein.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, and the final part of any public hearing is if there is going to be any action. So common council action.
I would move to approve the plan unit development, the general development plan to allow construction of 5 duplex residential buildings on a portion of the Platteville Golf and Country Club property as proposed, subject to the following conditions. A is approval of a certified survey map to create the 1.9 acre parcel where the condominiums will be located. B, annexation of the parcel to allow connection to city utilities. C, approval of the PUD, SIP, and a development agreement that will include additional details on the project. D is the project will include individual rain gardens or detention features for each building. E, the project will include 1 driveway, but a traffic report will be provided showing that another access point is not warranted. And F, the project includes internal and external connections for pedestrians via sidewalks or a multi-use path.
Second that.
All right, we have a motion by Eileen and a second by Isaac to approve the general development plan with conditions as were detailed. Candace will vote.
Shanley,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Cop,
Yes.
Arts,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Killian,
yes,
Klein.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is consideration of the consent calendar. The following items may be approved on a single motion and vote due to their routine nature. The first item on here is council minutes from October 6th, the special meeting, and October 13th, the regular meeting. Candace, is this where you want to talk?
Yep, this is where I'm asking for forgiveness. I do not have them completed in order to present them to you tonight.
Okay, so we will delete A. There will not be any minutes on this consent calendar. So the first item on the consent calendar will be payment of bills. Second, appointments to boards and commissions, and I have none tonight. I would let people know that we are looking for a new member for the Airport Commission. We're also looking for members for the Parks, Forestry, and Recreation Committee. Unfortunately, the last 2 people I appointed have already resigned. So appointments to boards and commissions. Licenses, there are 1 and 2 year operator licenses to sell and serve alcohol in your packet, as is a taxi driver license. And the final consideration is canceling the second meeting in December, which is a usual activity. I think this year that meeting would actually be on December 22nd. So that would be canceling the December 22nd regular meeting. So do I hear a motion on the consent calendar?
I move to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ken and a second by Kathy to approve the consent calendar without the minutes, since they weren't included. Candace will vote.
Shanley,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Cop,
Yes.
Arts,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes,
Klein.
Yes.
I have a question for Barb.
Oh, yes.
Did you appoint anybody to the Housing Authority at the last meeting?
Not the Housing Authority.
Okay,
I,
there'll be an opening on the Housing Authority. Marilyn Guttrock is going to be resigning.
right. And my understanding is her resignation is effective December 30th.
Is what?
Her resignation is effective, I believe, December 31st.
Okay.
Okay. I just got that note this week. Okay, moving on, citizens' comments, observations, and petitions, if any. I have a Ben from the UW Platteville Student Body President, who has asked to share something during this time period. So Ben.
Yes, I'm not sure if either the city communications or if you, Barb, could share that poster that I sent to you within the chat.
Just give me a second.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you. So Student Senate is putting on a virtual town hall event. So far, we have been able to get Sean Murphy Lopez's campaign, Travis Tranel's campaign, and Van Orden's campaign. We have not yet gotten Ron Kine's campaign yet. However, hopefully we will be hearing back from his campaign soon. But this will be a Zoom event. We will probably be sending out the Zoom link on our Facebook page, so Student Senate's Facebook page, if you're interested in that, it'll be there. All the other participants, except for the hosts, will be muted and chat will be turned off, except for those going to the host. But nonetheless, they will be there answering questions. We got questions from the students and the top 5 things that they wanted to hear about. Let me pull it up real quick. Let's see. 1 second. The top 3 are healthcare. Yeah, let's see where that is. All right, the top 3 are healthcare, and then we have, sorry, I'm trying to find it. Ah, there we go. Okay, so the first one was COVID. 36 students wanted to hear from that. And then after that, we have environment, healthcare, education, and taxes. So those are going to be the 5 areas that we are going to be talking about with the candidates and the questions we will be developing tonight. So if you are interested on any of those times, so Sean Murphy Lopez will be tomorrow at 5 o'clock, and then Travis Tranel and Derek Van Orden will be the day after, from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. for those 2.
Sorry, Ben. How do we find the link or?
Yep, it will be on our Student Senate Facebook page. So if you're on Facebook, if you type in UW Platteville Student Senate, it'll come up there, but it's not posted yet, but it will be tomorrow. So the day of the event, the Zoom link for that event will be there. Any other questions?
Who's the moderator?
It will be myself, Kirsten Fry, so my VP, and Logan Podlesnik, who is our legislative affairs, and then Rose Smirsky, who is the vice chancellor, one of the vice chancellors at the university. So it'll be us 4.
Okay. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
And I guess then, I know of no other person on this. As I look through the people who are in attendance, I know of no other person here who would make a comment during this time. Again, if you want to talk generally about an item that is not on the agenda, this would be the time to use the participant button and raise your hand. And that doesn't include scratching your nose, I think. You weren't raising your hand. I do see you. Okay. Then let's move on to reports. There were a couple in your packet. First of all, Library Board, Robin.
Sorry, nothing to add.
Okay. And Parks, Forestry, and Recreation, Jason.
Nothing right now, but possibly in our discussion section.
Okay, except that you need members. Right?
What was that?
Except that you need members.
Like members for the committee?
Yes.
Yes, that would be nice.
Okay. All right, then let's move on to our action items for tonight. The first is Resolution 20-26, authorizing the issuance and establishing parameters for the sale of not to exceed $1.495 million in water and sewer system revenue bonds, Series 2020C. Nicola.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so as we talked about in the last council meeting, we have some projects, some capital projects for the water and sewer utility, which we planned to fund through issuing bonds. Due to some timing issues with bond closing, we recommended that the closing be on December the 2nd, but that would require some additional language in the resolution whereby the council would give authorization for city staff to approve the sale of the bonds, since the council would not be meeting until December 8th, and we would like to schedule the sale for December 2nd. In the packet, you received the wording of the resolution and also the pre-sale report. And Brian Romer, our utility advisor with Ellis, is here, and he is going to present that report to you.
Thanks, Nicola. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Seeing a few head nods, so that means go for Zoom. So if you look past the resolution that was provided in your packet, there is our Ellers pre-sale report that you're probably accustomed to from the Series 2020A and the Series 2020B. So now we're on 2020C for our revenue bonds. Pretty much the story here, outside of the manner in which you're handling sale day, which Nicola just thoroughly explained, is that you're going to be issuing 19-year bonds for a total of 1.495 million. Right now, that is the estimated amount. If you remember from my explanation last year at the end of 2019, with revenue bonds, there can be some significant movement on sale day. And specifically that comes with your reserve account requirement that you may note throughout the resolution, that, you know, with revenue bonds, you are required to hold a certain amount of funds on hand in order to pay that debt service should the revenues of your utility systems not be available to pay that debt service. So with that said, the reserve account is really dependent on your payments, not only of your existing bonds, but the new bonds as well. So that's where you will kind of see that movement as the numbers come in terms of what you're paying, what your overall payments are on these new 2020C revenue bonds. So with that said, you know, I'll just say similarly to your previous revenue bonds, you're going to be rated as well. So we already had the rating call as with the low interest environment, Standard & Poor's is quite busy and has asked for some additional lead time in order to get the rating out. And so that was also tackled as well in our call. At the end of the call, they had promised that they would get this rating out in time so that bondholders and potential underwriters would be aware of what the rating is. We would expect the rating to remain the same, kind of based on the communications that happened within that call. One other thing I'll note, just kind of mechanics of the bonds outside of 19-year term, that these will be callable, similar to last year's, looking at about, I have it listed in the actual numbers here, 2032 maturities and beyond would be prepayable. Now I'll say, really looking at the interest rate environment we're in, it would be hard to imagine lower interest rates where it makes sense for a savings purpose. But however, we want to keep that call feature for financial flexibility. What that does is, should you need to restructure debt for any certain number of reasons, having callable maturities certainly does provide that financial flexibility. Most of the other information within the context of our pre-sale report is pretty similar to things that you've already seen. So I don't want to spend too much time, although I'll point your attention to page 3 of that, where you're looking at the parameters. And so, as Nicola explained, based on when we would desire to close and receive the funds, we had recommended going through a parameters resolution, where on sale day, since you're not having a regular meeting that day, that we have city staff be the ones who authorize it, as long as the underwriters hit these parameters. So we are doing a competitive sale similar to prior years, where you'll have several underwriters bid on this. The winning bid not only has to meet these parameters, but then will be awarded based on the lowest true interest cost. So with that said, the parameters as listed on page 3 here is that we don't want the issue size to exceed this amount. And that'll go to explain why you may see in the numbers section later on why there's some additional rounding. And really that's more or less a cushion for that debt service reserve requirement if we were to have higher interest rates than what's estimated here. And then in addition to that, we've issued a maximum bid and minimum bid, so that, making sure you understand that these underwriters, are competing against each other, but can certainly offer a deal at a premium or a discount. Typically what's happening in the low interest rate environment, quite honestly, is you're seeing a lot of premium deals. What that means is they're asking you to pay a higher interest rate than market rates, but truly they're paying you a premium upfront for that. So you're able to downsize the bonds even further or deposit that into your debt service account. Considering these monies are already expended, the debt service account might be the way to go here, or a mix of both, in order to get the lowest debt payments moving forward. That said, we're looking for the maximum true interest cost to be 3.25. I've been sharing some recent revenue deals with city staff for the past couple of months. We've certainly seen interest rates around 2% for revenue deals within the past couple of months, and specifically 20-year deals. So with that said, we kind of would anticipate the interest rates that are depicted later, but just in case there's market movement, we had a level of conservatism there for the maximum true interest cost. Looking at any other considerations here, moving on in this pre-sale report, I'll just say that these are, these debt payments will be paid by the water and sewer utility. These already have been considered in the financial management plan. So I think the most important table for everyone to look at that may be a little bit more unique when we get to the numbers is table 4 in our report. So that's page 80 of your packets. And what I'll say there is I have this sectioned off in 3 different sections of columns. So the first 5 columns are looking at an analysis that the underwriter would look at to make sure that you can close on the bonds. And what that's saying is, what's your existing revenue debt service? What's the added debt service from this issue? And do you have the revenues available right now with your latest financial audit that would say, yes, we can make those payments? And you are not only able to make those payments, but this shows when you get to a 2 debt coverage, you're able to make double. So with that said, the second section of columns is adding in our financial management plan, the utility portion of that, into this analysis. And what this is geared to show is kind of what's our future plans and how does this issuance affect that with looking at our next 5-year capital improvements. And so you can kind of see how debt coverage is calculated there. And one of the important things to consider there is obviously, it gets thinner in the middle years and beyond, and it's expected that we probably try to stay around this 2 level or later. So what this shows us is now that we have this 2020 issue, the total borrow money needs in front of us, in looking to update, the financial management plan next year, or as you go into future years, further consideration to structure can be given. As you might notice, the structure here, weighting it a little heavier on the later maturities, meaning we're making higher principal payments at the end. And the reason being is trying to keep that level of debt coverage at where you're at now. It's providing you that rating that provides you low interest rates on the debt. So ideally, we want to stay in that financial position. So wanted to provide that analysis to kind of connect the dots for you guys from our financial management plan to this debt issuance. And then the last 2 columns are what we call all in. And I just, I make the note at the bottom of this table, but just please understand that all in debt also includes your pilot payment that the water utility makes, because that is a cash expense. It's not considered as part of what you actually need to close on the bonds, but it is important because it's a significant and material expense that the water utility makes. And then in addition to that, any geo debt that these utilities may be responsible for is also included. So that's kind of more or less the true financial picture of, can we make these debt service payments? So that's what the all-in 2 columns are there to be shown. So same story would go as, I think, future consideration as you actually come to the financing table each year, looking at the structural considerations and trying to make sure that you're kind of keeping with your current financial picture as it is a strong position is as secured by your rating. So with that said, I have no additional comments, but I would certainly, I wanted to go through this in the interest of your time, but we'll be here to answer any questions if you think I've gone over anything too fast, or you want to go back to any of the other tables.
Okay, Eileen, do you have questions of Brian or Nicola?
I do not.
Jason?
No questions.
Robin? No questions? Isaac?
No questions.
Kathy?
No questions.
Ken?
So mandatory redemption, you're not recommending that because the interest rate will likely be low enough? And when is this mandatory redemption possibly usable?
So you would be able to have redemption of these in year maturity 2032 and beyond. That exercise is typically, you kind of start at a 50-50 scenario. So you want to split your principal 50-50, and then it changes based on kind of market movement and volatility. Right now we're seeing underwriters actually willing to do a little bit of a higher split into 60-40 that can be callable. So what we're suggesting here is more closer to a 60-40 split. This is kind of similar to what you saw in the 2019 issue that didn't actually really punish you on rates at all. And it's also what we've been seeing in the other revenue bond deals that we've done this fall and moving into winter here. So that's what we see for your mandatory and optional redemptions. So your last payment that you really can't prepay would be your 2031 maturity, but it would be callable after that payment at any time. So if you wanted to start calling or prepaying that debt, you certainly could.
I have a question for Adam, Dan, and Nicola. I'm looking at water and sewer utilities. I assume these are the ones listed for payment. Are we going to get any money from Industry Park as far as payment on manhole replacement from Emmy Roth? The total price here is $155,000, and half of that is about $77,000. So is there any discussion to have payment on manhole replacement?
I can answer that one. Per the Water and Sewer Commission's request, we requested payment of half of the cost of replacement of the manholes out in the industry park only. And they did in fact cut us a check for $40-some thousand as requested.
So there's $155,000 left here as far as cost. So they paid us $40,000.
Yes, I mean, that one project had the $80-some thousand for the industry park, plus we also had payment for replacement of manholes in the West Gulf Drive area. So that project was lumped together as one project. And that's what that 155 is supposed to encompass.
Okay, so this is not relevant to the resolution, right?
Well, it is actually part of what we're borrowing for.
Out of bond.
The total project was $202,000, and of that, 5 of the 25 manholes total, if I'm not mistaken, with 5 paid for by Emmy, and that was where the $43,515 came from, and then $158,000 and change was paid for or will be paid for through this bond issue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's questions. I think I've made the round. So are we ready to take action on this resolution? Does anyone want to offer a motion?
Well, I'll make a motion. I move to adopt resolution 20-26, authorizing the issuance and establishing parameters for the sale of not to exceed 1.495 million water and sewer system revenue bonds, series 2020C, and providing for the payment of the bonds and other details with respect to the bonds.
Second to the motion.
I have a motion by Isaac and a second by Ken to authorize this resolution for the issuance and establishing parameters for the sale of these revenue bonds. Candace will vote.
Stanley?
Yes.
Nichols?
Yes.
Kopp?
Yes.
Arts?
Yes.
Doss?
Yes.
Killian?
Yes.
And Klein.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on our agenda then is another action item. This is designation of Indian Park as a local historic site. So Lori. I believe this is
Hi.
you. There you are.
Yep. Yes. So just sort of refresh from last meeting. In September, the Historic Preservation Commission held a public hearing to designate Indian Park as a local historic site. There have been members of the Friends of Indian Park that have been working on a history of the park, and a member of HPC actually submitted the application on their behalf. At the public hearing, everybody pretty much supported it. There was no negative feedback from that information, and I haven't received anything but strong support for it at this time.
Okay. Questions of Lori as they relate to this item designating Indian Park as a local historic site. We'll start with Isaac.
No questions.
Kathy.
No questions.
Ken.
No questions?
Robin.
No questions.
Jason.
No questions.
Eileen.
No questions.
Okay, Lori, I do have a question. Are there any easements through this park? Like for water?
I would not know that without a title search. I'm not aware of any. I'm not sure if Joe or Howard would know of any.
I looked and we currently do not have any water or sanitary sewer in the park itself. We just, in the last 5 years, redid both 4th Street and Court Street on each side, and there were no water or sewer stubs going into the park.
I'm also not aware of any easements.
And is there electric wires through that park?
There is a light pole in the center of the park, and it's fed off of Court Street with an overhead line.
And that is our pole, or?
I do not know the answer to that question.
I believe that that's one that we rent, if you will, from Alliant Energy.
Okay, well, I don't have objection. In fact, I've looked at all the videos. I don't have objection to designating this as a local historic site. I would want to preserve the ability to have proper lighting at that park, though. So I wouldn't want any designation that we made to exclude the fact that there is a light in the park, and we would expect that it would be continued. So that,
Right.
that would be my input.
So
I don't have, yeah.
Okay.
So is anybody ready to take action on this item?
I will move to approve the designation of Indian Park as a local historic site.
Second to the
I'll
motion.
second.
Okay, we have a motion by Kathy with a second by both Ken and Jason. So I think we have plenty of seconds. And again, Kathy, you didn't mention the light, but again, I'm concerned that doing this designation doesn't end up giving us a dark park. So we'll vote.
Before we vote, do you want that to be a part of the motion?
It's not part of Kathy's motion.
Okay.
And may I amend that to include the condition of lighting?
If your seconds are amenable to that.
That's fine with me.
Okay, so it now includes that there's an understanding that lighting will be included, Kathy and Ken, so now we'll vote.
Right. Shanley?
Yes.
Nichols?
Yes.
Pop?
Yes.
Hart?
Yes.
Joss?
Yes.
Killian?
Yes.
Klein?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, and the final item on our agenda tonight for action is memorandum of understanding with the Platteville Housing Authority. And so I believe, Adam, this is yours.
Yep. So again, at the last meeting that we had, the recommendation was to move this towards an action item from the council. So this is up for council approval tonight. What you'll see is the only changes really that have been made to the document was based on feedback from the council, which was to add in that the Platteville Housing Authority and the city of Platteville shall review this agreement annually in September. So just setting a date to ensure that we continually look at this document. And then there was also some kind of clarification in regards to what city staff would do when they received particularly an inquiry. And those inquiries typically would only be received if they come through the phone prompts. So it's just clearing up that language a little bit more to indicate that individuals that would contact either city staff through our phone prompts would then be communicated to the housing authority. Otherwise, the typical response will always be, to direct any individual that comes into City Hall to speak directly with the executive director of the housing authority. So again, this memorandum of understanding is something that we've had really kind of as a handshake agreement, if you want to call it. So this is just more putting it ironclad into written documentation so that we have it going forward.
Okay, questions, Eileen?
I guess the only comment was when I saw something about City of Platteville envelopes. I'm wondering if that means that the return address says City of Platteville, or is it just a blank envelope? My question is asked because there's a perception sometimes that the housing authority is part of City Hall, and it's a separate entity. And so I guess my preference, if City of Platteville envelopes are used, that it would say the housing authority and their mailing address as a return address.
Correct. And typically that is the case.
Okay.
Jason?
Nothing right now.
Robin?
I don't have any questions.
Isaac?
No questions or comments.
Kathy?
No questions.
Ken?
No question.
Okay, and Ken is the council rep to the housing authority. So again, if there are no other questions, I believe Adam has clarified the phone answering. There is a prompt in the telephone, menu, I guess I would say, that is for the housing authority. But in fact, the housing authority is separate from the city. And so city staff would basically refer any questions or comments or anything to the housing authority. So I guess I'll take a motion on this memorandum of understanding.
I would move that we approve the memorandum of understanding between and by the City of Platteville and the Platteville Housing Authority.
Okay, we have a motion.
A second.
A motion by Ken and a second by Jason. Candace will vote.
Stanley?
Yes.
Nichols?
Yes.
Kopp?
Yes.
Hartz?
Yes.
Doss?
Yes.
Killian?
Yes.
Klein?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, then we're now to the information and discussion portion of our agenda. And in this portion, our first item is the sidewalk policy. Joe.
Yes, thank you. So this sidewalk policy came out of initially some discussions at the Safe Routes Committee, Community Safe Routes Committee meetings, where there was some questions, I guess, regarding city regulations regarding sidewalk requirements for new development in the community. And that led to some joint conversations between the Community Safe Routes Committee, the Plan Commission, and city staff, looking at the existing regulations that we have that deal with sidewalks, primarily the zoning ordinance, subdivision ordinance, and then additional chapter 4, which is deals with sidewalks and streets. And the initial intent was to, look at potential revisions to those ordinances regarding the requirements for sidewalks. And the initial discussions kind of led us to the realization that before we get into piecemeal modifications to regulations, it would be beneficial if we had kind of an overarching document that helped provide a guide to those ordinance changes. So that's where we came up with the sidewalk policy, which the intent would be to kind of give the direction as far as how the city of Platteville wants to deal with sidewalks and how sidewalk requirements relate to development and redevelopment projects. So that would include private development, commercial, industrial, multifamily redevelopment, as well as reconstruction of city streets. So that's the intent behind this. So it gets into some detail, but as I mentioned, the intent really is to provide the overall guide to how the city would like to deal with that. And then we would follow up with either adopting this in some format as its own ordinance, or adopt changes to the other ordinances that I mentioned. So we thought we'd start with kind of the higher elevation view of the situation, and then dive into the details later. So as I mentioned, this was a joint effort between the Community Safe Routes Committee and the Planning Commission city staff. There was some discussion. I would say everybody agreed to pass this on to the council. I think there were still some items that were some open for discussion, I guess, or the groups wanted the council to make the final decision on what the requirements would be. So as you look through this for next time, I would say a couple of items to keep in mind. I tried to get a clear direction on what the requirements should be for sidewalks in the industry park, because as I looked at other communities, they tended to, in many cases, treat the industry park different than other parts of the community. Right now, as it's kind of written, that would be a requirement for sidewalks, but that would be something I would like to have clarified for sure. The last meeting, there was some continued discussion about, I would say, whether there should be more exceptions allowed for instances where a sidewalk on both sides of every street may not be warranted. So as you're looking through that, keep that in mind as well. For instance, one item that was talked about is we have some subdivisions that don't have any connecting sidewalks in the near vicinity. Should that be an area that we want to require sidewalks if there's a development on that street, or as the city reconfigures that street or reconstructs that street? So keep those items in mind, and as you look through that, and then obviously if you have any questions before the next meeting, you can contact one of the staff members. So I don't know if Adam or Howard has anything to add. They were involved in the process as well.
Howard, do you have anything to add?
No, thank you. Yeah.
Adam, anything to add? Okay, Jason, you serve on the Community Safe Routes Committee. Anything here that you want to add?
Nothing to add. Just really appreciate all the members of both committees putting in the extra time for the meetings and coming up with this policy.
And Isaac, you're on the Plan Commission. Anything you want to add?
Well, one thing I want to go through is I made this up, or this comment at the planning commission part too, is I'm still against on the new subdivisions requiring that a new subdivision has sidewalks, and especially on both sides of the street. I brought this up at that committee as well, as the fact that, the city of Platteville already, from the city of Platteville compared to our surrounding neighbor cities, municipalities, is already lagging in new construction. And also we want to add one more concept that the new subdivision has to have. As I stated before, It would take Lancaster, Fenimore, Dodgeville has 2 subdivisions, Mentor Point, Keeler. Those new subdivisions that are actually building and outpacing Platteville in yearly new construction do not require subdivisions, or excuse me, sidewalks in those subdivisions. And what I would say Platteville has right now about 4 subdivisions, one on the east side, one on the northeast side, one in the south, and one in the southwest. The 2 that outsold the fastest were, again, the 2 that did not have sidewalks. Keystone Estates does have sidewalks, and they've sold 6 lots in 12 years. That's a pretty bad absorption rate and a selling rate, you know, especially for a city the size of Platteville. I brought up Cody subdivision, does have sidewalks. Not one of those lots was sold to somebody outside or besides Cody. Bob put all the homes and the condos and the multifamily units up themselves. And those lots were for sale and open to the public to buy, but nobody bought them. So everything else I thought looked good in here, except for, like I said, I just don't like the fact that we're going to require somebody that wants to come in and do a new subdivision, especially if they're not going to ask for any city money to require them to put a sidewalk in. And if you look at it, another thing is some of the areas that would be suitable for a new subdivision would not be connected by a different subdivision that already has a sidewalk. You know, if we're looking at, say, the Bellmeyer property south of Platteville, that would be past the Knollwood Way area. Why would we ask them to put a sidewalk in their new subdivision when there's not one that even gets to it? So that's all I'd have this time.
Okay, Kathy, do you have comments about the sidewalk policy or things that you want to discuss?
Yeah, a couple things. It's on page, but it says page 1, where it says it's item C, installation of sidewalks for street projects. All properties adjacent to street reconstruction projects shall have sidewalk installed along the street frontages where none exists. That, I guess I'm questioning, number one, that I know that's going to increase the cost. Looking at the overall city situation, and still being new to this with the upkeep, we're lacking on that with current sidewalks. So the overall implementation of a sidewalk policy, I think we need to be aware if, and I know it's been discussed before, you're looking at new development, that would be a requirement of the developer, but for example, a street reconstruction, that would fall back on a city cost if the precedent continues on that the city installs the sidewalks. So just want to that's my big thing. It's like that particular statement I think would fall under that category of maybe some exceptions. It's pretty terse where it says all properties shall have sidewalk installed. So that's my only comment right now.
Okay, Ken.
Well, my question is who pays? So Kathy is saying the city is going to pay if the present sidewalk is being replaced?
Well, Ken, that's the way it's happening right now. Precedent right now is when a street is reconstructed, if there's sidewalk along that street, it's included in the street construction project and the city pays.
So in this,
well, actually the taxpayers pay because we collect the taxes or we do the bond. So everyone pays, not just the property owners on that street.
So
I guess I would say everyone pays.
So in this new policy, that would continue.
That would continue.
Right.
And then Isaac is talking about for new construction, the developer, the owner would pay.
And he is saying that that is our current policy, that in new developments, the owner of that development puts in the infrastructure, which includes sidewalks. And his argument is, yeah, I guess argument, his information is that anytime if the developer has to put in the road, developer has to put in the curb and gutter, developer has to put in the water and sewer, and when the developer also has to put in the sidewalk, that makes us at Platteville different than, for instance, Dodgeville, is that what you said, Isaac? And
Yep, there's
Keeler and,
Yep.
and these other communities where the developer doesn't have that additional cost, which in fact gets passed on to whoever buys the lot. So
My
his
other
thing
question-
is, we don't want to make lots so expensive here that no one wants to build.
My other question is related to specifics here. Concrete is supposed to be 4 inches thick. What is going to be the recommended width of sidewalk? Where is that discussed in this document? What's the width?
What it means is in number 1, current pedestrian right-of-way accessibility guideline standards. Right now, those current standards say 5 feet wide. They can be as narrow as 4 feet as long as there are passing areas that are 5 feet wide every, I think it's 300 feet. And so we implemented that on our projects this year. I left it as the ProAg standards in case they change in the future.
So you didn't specify the numbers themselves?
No.
Okay, so that's E1. E1?
E1, correct.
Okay. So from 5 feet to 4 feet?
In the current ProAg standards, they say 5 feet, but it can be as narrow as 4 feet with certain conditions.
Okay. I couldn't find numbers, so that's why I asked the question.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions, Ken?
No.
Robin?
No questions right now.
Jason?
No other questions.
Eileen?
I have no questions.
Okay. Ken, you mentioned payment for sidewalks. One of the things that was briefly discussed by the Plan Commission and the Community Safe Routes Commission was a transportation utility, like a water utility, a sewer utility. This would be a transportation utility. In order to even think about forming such a utility, you would need a study. And I believe Howard had included an option in his CIP request saying that it would be about $75,000. And this would just be for the study, not for necessarily implementation, I guess, or maybe that's the study and implementation. So the group did talk about alternative funding sources, but not for a long, not in depth. Okay. So the Plan Commission and the Safe Routes Committee spent about 3 or 4 meetings on this, Joe, is that correct?
Yes.
Right. So I would ask that all of you read it thoroughly and bring additional questions to next month's meeting. If you have additional questions, please forward them to Joe and Howard. And depending on if I see questions or not, if we have a lot of questions that come up that people are asking or a lot of revisions, then we'll keep this for information next time. If no one has a lot to say about this, then we're probably going to move it to action for next time. So it's incumbent on you, if you think there need to be big changes in this document, or if you have big issues, with this document to let Joe and Howard know so that we can talk about your suggested changes in another information and discussion area of the agenda rather than in the action stage of the agenda. So take a thorough read of it and get your questions to Joe and Howard. Okay, item B on information discussion is resolution for support of a museum community development block grant. And Adam or Eric, who's taking this?
I will take this one, and then if Eric wants to add anything, he's more than welcome to do so. Grant County notified the city of Platteville that they were accepting potential projects to be funded by their community development block grant funds. So municipalities were encouraged to apply for funding for potential projects, which would be reviewed by the county board. So the city actually submitted 2, and I can see that the sidewalk example was the one that's in your packet. I'll make sure that you also get emailed the museum one that was sent in as well. But what we received notification on was that the 1905 Hammer Robbins School Building Roof Replacement Project is the one that actually was selected by the county to move forward for consideration. So within that kind of application that we submitted, we asked that, we explained that the current roof, which appears to date to at least 1957, needs to be torn off and replaced. There's active leaks around the cupola, dormer ends, and valleys. The tar paper underlayment is broken down, especially at the valleys where it has experienced long-term saturation. So the leaks allows water obviously to enter into the attic, where staff currently is using kind of wading pools and buckets to collect that water to try to prevent any further water leaks from entering the collection storage area. Working kind of with city staff, we were notified by Ron Brisboy that our application made it to the next step of the process for potential consideration. So our application will be discussed by the county board during anticipated December public hearing. And so in reviewing best practices, a resolution from the city of Platteville supporting the use of the county's community development block grant closed funds for the project would be beneficial. So as you'll see in kind of the budget and fiscal impact section, this is actually something that we added to the updated budget, which we'll be going over kind of in the work session, but it's under our capital improvement planning now as potentially getting this as 100% funding and other sources from the county. So we submitted essentially the application for about $251,480 to assist in the replacement of the roof. There has been money that the city has put into their CIP plan. We had $10,000 that was allocated towards roof repairs as kind of a recurring item. So the city has put money aside towards this project. So essentially what we're looking for is asking the Common Council to officially adopt the resolution. So the resolution just kind of clearly indicates that, you know, the city is in support of this project and is definitely in support of and extremely appreciative of the county granting obviously their community development block grant funds to be allocated towards the museum, which goes directly in line with, if you recall, our strategic plan has this as a item within the next 3 years that we really wanted to tackle was museum upgrades, and the roof hit that list. So at this time, I will answer any, I guess, questions or concerns that you have.
Or before that, Eric, do you have anything you want to add? Adam's explanation was pretty good, so.
Yeah, Adam's explanation really hit all the high notes, so I have nothing to add unless there are specific questions.
Okay, so this would be a resolution. The application, the 2 or 3 page application has been submitted. The exec board of the county board has reviewed it. And so now the next step would be that it goes to the county board for public hearing. And this resolution would be part of the packet that would be for the county board. So question, Ken.
So Adam, next time you're going to write a memo similar to the sidewalk one here.
Actually, I think he has that. I think it's just, there were 2 submitted, and I think it was just that the wrong one got included with the packet.
That would be correct. So I will make sure I have a note here at the end of the either tomorrow morning or before I leave tonight to make sure that you get a copy of that to review.
For the next meeting.
Yes.
Thank you.
Kathy, any questions?
No, not at this time.
Isaac,
No questions.
Robin,
No question.
Jason,
No questions.
Eileen.
No questions.
I would just say that if we can get this $141,480, which is the estimated cost of the replacement, it would go a long way in our strategic planning initiatives, which was for 2021, re-roof the Hamner Robbins building. So I think it would go a long way. So that would be what we have for the resolution. If you have any additional questions, let Adam know. Otherwise, we're going to move along to the next agenda item, which is a discussion of pickleball new court location. And I believe that this item falls to Luke.
Yeah, that'd be correct. So just to introduce the project, a group organized as a pro.
Is everybody hearing Luke?
Courts here in Platteville. They're currently.
Voice.
Say that again.
Luke, we're not hearing you. You're cutting in and out.
I don't know. I'm trying. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you right now, but we don't see you. Oh, now we see you. Okay.
My internet may be unstable. Keep going, or should I try calling in?
Oh, you're back.
I'm
Go
back.
back. Start again.
Okay. We'll start over. So this is a request from a group of pickleball players that have organized as the Platteville Area Pickleball Association, or PAPA, to fund and construct dedicated pickleball courts here in Platteville. They're currently working with Inspiring Community, who is the group that assisted with the Broski Center project, to conduct some fundraising and some administrative work for them. Their current goal would be to build a pickleball court in Legion Park, on the southwest side of Legion Park, more specifically, which is the area that most people might know as the ice rink. In looking at Legion Park, they have met with staff and met with representatives from Platteville Dairy Days, Platteville Youth Diamond Sports, and also the lead volunteer for the ice rink. None of those groups has a major objection to the pickleball facility being built in that location. In fact, that was, if Legion Park was the desired location, they would prefer the pickleball complex to go. Along with that, though, the ice rink specifically would require some adjustments. We would need to move the lights for the ice rink and likely add an additional water hookup, because the ice rink, as shown in, would be then relocated to the northwest side of the park. And again, just because of the winter season that the ice typically used during, it's so dark early, those lights would be definitely necessary there. And our volunteers were concerned that if they were to run hoses that far, there would just be too much friction and they wouldn't be able to spray the ice rink. So they're recommending putting a new water hookup closer to that location if this project were to be going forward, as kind of presented in your handout. Essentially what they're looking for at this time would be, I guess, a preliminary approval of the location, so that they continue with fundraising with the good knowledge that that would be, a spot that they could utilize and the potential donors. The only other thing really to add at this point is, along with this request, they are, they would eventually like to see the city contribute some funding towards that, which I noted in my fiscal impact report. Staff would be supportive of using up to $50,000 from park impact fees. We currently have $85,000 in that park impact fee account, and we would support a donation of $50,000 towards this project to help get them started along their way. There are several representatives here. I believe Bill Grutz is here as well, and he is planning on being the designated speaker if there's any questions specifically to the group.
Okay, folks. Luke, do you want to identify the others, or Bill, do you want to identify the others in the audience that are here with pickleball group? Luke or Bill, who wants to do that?
I might not be able to point out everyone. I see Larry Trine is here. I see Mike Hefty is here. I see Bill is here. I'm probably going to miss people, so bear with me. I see my parents, Jim and Jean Peters, are here. I see Bill Saunders is here. I see Lori Adrian is here. I see Irene McCartney is here. I see Cheryl Hefty is here. There's some people I don't necessarily recognize. I'm sorry, I don't recognize you as a member of the steering committee. So there may be others that Bill would be able to point out better than I could.
Okay, Bill, do you want to just point out the rest that are here so that the council members know?
I see Joyce Evelyn and Gordy Jemsky are the other two I think that he missed, or the only two that he missed.
There's a Sandy waving as well.
Sandy, yes, but she was at the end of the list.
And I think Sheila Tranel is on too. And Randy, are you here for this? Randy Karsten?
Sounded like I got a yes I am mouth.
So there are quite a few people here. So and I don't know who Stephen is, but Stephen just came on. All right. So I'm going to go around for a round of questions. This is the request, Luke, to go for action at the next meeting is to approve a location for pickleball courts in Legion Park in the southwest corner.
The one thing I should add is that the Parks, Forestry, and Recreation Committee has met about this. They did table and did not take any action at this time. They requested staff to reach out to the Platteville School District and also all neighboring property owners, both for Legion Park and our alternate location, which would be Westview Park, to get feedback from those local property owners and the school district. I have heard back from the school district. The school district is in favor of either location and would be supportive of either location. But I have not, letters went out to homeowners, so we have not heard back from any homeowners yet.
Okay, so this is about location for pickleball courts. It appears from the drawing that it would be 8 courts, and they would be in the southwest portion of Legion Park. Pitt and 2nd Street, I believe. Okay, Isaac.
Just a couple of comments. So actually, I am one of the neighbors. My driveway would be directly across the street from this, and I would be in favor of that location if they were in that park there. So I was speaking with my wife about it tonight. We kind of discussed here, you know, I grew up in town and did use the ice skating rink, so I know how often that was used. Obviously, with today's weather, it has changed over the 20-some years since I've used it last. One thing we've noticed in between the potential ice skating ring, you know, we have Dare Days, maybe a couple other, you know, Strawberry, but other than that, we kind of estimated that 44 weeks out of the year, that corner is not used other than to get mowed. You know, so we think that would be a great location to have it up there. There's a sidewalk that runs on both sides of it, or excuse me, 2 sides of it. You can park on the north side of Pitt Street, and we've never had an issue with parking up here as well. To answer Luke's question, I have talked to a couple of my neighbors in the area here, and the few that I've talked to, none of them have said anything negative about having it there. So they thought, again, they thought it'd be another great use of an area that's not being utilized to its full potential. I do like the idea of the fact that this group is willing to put up about 80% of the cost to do it. Everything, I like the fact that we're not looking to buy any other property and take it off tax roll. We're using an existing non-tax parcel. So to me, I think it's one of those things that it's one more, I guess, sport or another item that you could add to our long list of things that we could add to our recreation department. And also when we're doing our advertising of the city for people that want to move here or already move here, it's one more thing that we can add, you know, basically at no cost to them that they can use for another outdoor activity. So I would like to kind of see some draw ups or some for the relocation of the ice skating rink, because it is kind of you know, rolling back there. You know, I know a little bit of excavating and stuff would have to be done, but I think it's a good project all the way around. So that's it.
Okay. Eileen.
I'm just curious, Luke, in your notes, you refer to Westview Park as staff preference for this pickleball courts. So can you just elaborate a little bit on why Westview Park was considered, but I understand the pickleball group would prefer Legion Park.
Yeah, there's certainly a strong preference from pickleballers to be in Legion Park, and I want to make it clear I do not have an issue with Legion Park. When we first had it on our comprehensive plan, the goal with Westview would be that you could have kind of a tennis, I guess a racket sport complex there. So I thought it could do, you know, adding this in Westview, I thought could be the start of more fully developing a secondary park versus adding another amenity to Legion Park. So, you know, if you were to add that, you'd have 4 tennis courts, 8 pickleball courts, look at adding parking and bathrooms. You know, I can't promise that right away. I think that would be down the road, but, you know, staff did feel initially the preferred location, but, you know, I think the community has certainly spoken and said that Legion Park is where they would like it to be seen. So I'm getting my internet unstable again. I apologize. So I think with that, you know, I think I have to present the full, you know, opinion of the public as well, which it seems to favor Legion Park.
Okay, and then where the ice skating rink would go, is that space being used for something else now?
Yeah, currently it's this year it wasn't used at all in part due to COVID. The past several years, I believe it's been 6 years now, it's been what's referred to as our rookie fields, which are used for T-ball and first and second grade baseball and softball programming. That would still be used for that. It would just have ice skating in the winter in addition to that. That area was actually originally the preferred location that the pickleballers were seeking, but in discussions with Platteville Dairy Days and youth baseball, there was definitely opposition to that space, particularly Dairy Days with the parking of the truck and tractor pull. The elimination of that space would essentially eliminate their ability to run those events. And while they're only, you know, a couple days a week, you know, if there's an alternate location, we certainly wanted to, you know, respect that their space had been utilized in that function, and hopefully add an amenity to Dairy Days rather than subtracting, you know, taking something away from it. And adding an amenity being pickleball could be done as a, you know, like bean bags or, you know, some type of tournament at Dairy Days.
Okay, thank you.
Jason.
No questions. Just to add that at the Parks and Rec Committee, the other committee members were really hoping to get the feedback, you know, if it comes in from the community, and be able to make a recommendation at the next Parks Committee meeting before it comes to the council for a vote. So that would be the only thing that I would add.
So that date would be November 17th, which would be prior to your next meeting. So what Jason might be asking is it might be possible for you to give a leaning, but maybe delay the vote until after the Parks Committee has a chance to review it one more time.
Okay, because our next meeting would be the 9th, I think, wouldn't it?
10th, I believe, but
10th.
maybe I'm mistaken.
10th. It is the 10th, but the Parks Committee meets after that.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. Okay, and so Jason is saying the Parks Committee would really like an opportunity to weigh in on this before the council makes actually has a motion. Okay, Kathy.
Couple questions. Luke, I'm not familiar with this totally, but the comment about the park impact fee account, currently has $85,000, and you'll be looking at a pledge of $50,000 from that. Kind of goes hand in hand with the question. I like the idea of this project. Sounds like there's a lot of interest from the community, but is the development of pickleball within the long-range strategic plan of the park board? Or is this something that just kind of took on a life of its own because of the increase in popularity? I guess my question really comes down to, is there a thought that the area that is being looked at Legion Park conceivably eventually would have been used for something else for some other type of recreation?
I can take this a couple directions. So specifically for Legion Park, this area was not on our radar for developing for another use.
Okay.
It was going to be, I guess, first and foremost, a green space in the park. It was not, this is not affected. Legion Park includes something like a farm themed playground, a silo shelter, possibly covering the batting cages, and then a lot of rotating and flipping of fields to fit more baseball fields around the concession stands. So this project does not in any way affect that. I would have to go back and review if this project, I believe this project was in the plans for Westview Park. So it's not a new project. We've had pickleball as a part of our recreation programming since 2013. We've been working with pickleball players to try to find them spaces out since probably, I can't remember when we first did put one of the tennis courts, but at least since 2017, we've been working with this group to try to play outdoors. I do think it's come forward. I think COVID and losing the access to the Armory has certainly, increased put it on our radar, I guess, a little bit more. Just because without the indoor space, there's not really a great outdoor space for them to play that's dedicated, that doesn't require them to set up nets on their own, every time. And that's just, it's not conducive. I mean, I think if tennis players had to set up the nets every time they wanted to play, including poles, you wouldn't see as many tennis players either, because it adds to your amount of time you're playing. So as one of the fastest growing sports, it's certainly something staff would be supportive of finding a way to make happen here in Platteville.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Robin.
I have a few questions, I guess. I don't know how contentious this is, but can you speak a bit to the incompatibility of the tennis and the pickleball courts? Is the Pickleball Association comfortable with people trying to play tennis on those courts, as I would imagine kids would be doing, on random days that they just show up to the park? And is that any sort of conflict?
So I can take that as a broad statement at first. So pickleball and tennis nationally is a conflict. And I don't totally understand that. I think it has to do with tennis is nationally as a sport that's been in decline, and they tend to have nice flat surfaces that are great for other activities besides tennis. So oftentimes pickleballers approach it as, we want to utilize the tennis space, and that's where the conflict can occur. By having dedicated space, I wouldn't say that represents a major conflict. I would imagine the Parks Board would follow a similar rule to what we have on tennis. So on our tennis courts, they're tennis priority first, other racket sports second, and any other activity third. I would think that pickleball would be set up a similar rule where they're pickleball first, other racket sports second, and any other activity beyond that. So pickleball, we might use it and how, or like the middle school might use it, is they are really close to a junior sized tennis court. So when we're using something like a foam ball that offers a low bounce, low flight, they're really great for training on training tennis. In fact, I that was one of the other attractive things at Westview is we would certainly use that part of our tennis programming. But it's not a bad thing. We still might use them where they're at. But again, I think the board would probably be leaning towards pickleball first, tennis seconds, other activities third.
Sure. And so that speaks to location a little bit. I think it will be great for this to be more visual for the public. You'll be outdoors, but you'll also be in a place where there's a lot of traffic, young and old. So I think just that potential for mixing generations there on that space is really exciting. And maybe just exposure for bringing in others to join that club. It brought up a question in my mind I've seen elsewhere. This is a broader policy for Luke, but would there be any availability of public equipment or even just a donation box? So pickleball is probably something that kids or others would observe, but not necessarily have in the garage, from generations passed down of how to use that. So I guess I'm just curious about that. You don't have to answer now, but I'd love to see some opportunity for access to equipment.
It's a surprising easy answer is we do have a lockbox that already holds pickleball equipment that could be utilized there, and people could check out a key to utilize paddles and balls. That lockbox is currently at temporary courts and can be moved to permanent courts to make that possible.
Where do they check it out? From City Hall or somewhere near the park? Like concession stands by chance or something?
More than likely they'd have to get at City Hall. But
Okay.
we do have several members of our organization that do have keys as well, the Platteville Area Pickleball Association.
Okay, and then the park impact fees were mentioned, and I know I've had this explained a bit more to me in the past, and I just don't recall, but what is your inflow of fees? Or how do you get, how much does that account go up versus how much we've been pulling recently? And then just keeping in mind, perhaps balancing between parks in the city, and that Legion has definitely seen some great improvements recently. So I know they've been used elsewhere. And before you make that last point, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say, being on the east side of town, I'm really excited to have some sort of courts that are within walking distance. We use parking lots to learn how to play tennis in my neighborhood. So having something nearby would be nice. So sorry if you want to speak about the impact fees a little bit.
Sure, it's variable because it depends on new development that goes in. Because this is now becoming a project that's happening at Legion Park, we preemptively did some maneuvering of behind the scenes where we had gifted some money out of the park impact fees. We asked that be returned. In exchange, we gave some money from the Orlo Clayton Trust, which is more restrictive and can only be used as at Legion Park. So we have some funds that are dedicated specifically to Legion Park. So I still think taking out impact fees is the right location for it. I would have to give you a breakdown in terms of, I couldn't tell you a good variable of how much goes in and out of that account on an annual basis. I'd say roughly it's between $5,000 and $10,000 a year, but let me bring that back to you.
Thanks.
For instance, Robin, I believe it would be correct to say that if the new development goes in at the Golf and Country Club, that I believe those lots, there will be park impact fees that will be paid into this account. So anytime there's a development that doesn't include dedicated parkland, I believe that there are park impact fees. So the last ones probably that went in were from Ruxton, I would suspect.
That's probably true.
Yeah. So that would have probably been the last inflow. Okay, Ken, questions?
Well, Eileen took a lot of my question, but I want to see a careful comparison of Westview as a location and Legion Park as a location. I read this over here as far as this beginning page, and there's not enough reasons given for why Legion Park is the best. Thank you.
So Ken,
Yeah, if
help
you want,
me clarify again. You want Luke to give you more details?
Well, he has, you can contact citizens and see if they're willing to have it at Westview. There's some willing to have it over at Legion Park. So what's the best location? Why is Legion Park such a treasured location?
the pickleballers who are here may be able to answer that better than I can even. But from what I've heard and talking to them, I think the existing parking was a great benefit in terms of just having the ability to access the courts. As Robin mentioned, visibility was one of their reasons that they listed, that it would be highly visible in that area. It'd be accessible for the middle school and high school students. Both FIED faculty at those locations have expressed interest in it. I will say so has Westview. And access to bathrooms, I think, is also one of the other reasons for desiring that location. The new Broski Sensei, such a great amenity for us that it would, immediately be an upgrade over utilizing porta potties at Westview.
Bill, Bill Grutz, you're speaking for the group. Would you give your address prior to speaking? But go ahead.
I'm at 4367 Jewel Lane,
Pardon?
Platteville. 4367 Jewel Lane.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay? I'm kind of a soft speaker. Luke covered most of the things. I think one of the things at Westview is that trees had to come down, and a lot of us were opposed to those trees coming down. And we originally were looking at 4 courts there. And in order to get, then we talked about 6, in order to get 6 courts there was going to be a tight squeeze. And we really thought, for forward thinking and the way the sport's growing, that doing 8 courts right away was what we wanted. And certainly the visibility up at Legion Park is something that we're looking for. And I think it's going to help us a lot in our fundraising, having it at that location versus behind the courts at Westview.
Okay. I have no questions about locations. So this item then, the decision that Luke wants is a council decision relative to location. Jason has respectfully requested that the council not make its final decision until the Parks, Forestry, and Recreation Committee has a chance to review and act on this. Am I correct, Jason, in that regard? Luke, can you respond to that?
Jason is correct, yes. I think that's what the request is. That's not to say the Parks, Forestry, and Recreation Committee might not be able to get that information and discuss it ahead of time before your next meeting. But if they are not, then we would likely ask that we delay a formal action until your meeting, which would be maybe on the 24th.
Yep, November 24th. All right, so are you suggesting you might call a special meeting of Parks, Recreation, and Forestry just to talk about this?
If I can get information to them before their regular meeting, I certainly would try to do that. And if they are able to meet, I think that would be beneficial for everyone. So the pickleball group can get going on their fundraising, because I believe they have an ambitious goal to try to fundraise and have courts ready by the end of next, at Dairy Days next year.
Okay. All right, so we will look to hear from you, Luke, in terms of scheduling a special meeting. At this time, we'll tentatively move it for action at the next meeting, unless we, with the hopes that you will be able to assemble the Parks, Recreation, and Forestry Committee for some type of meeting before then. Sound good? Barb, yeah, is that Eileen, is that Robin? Robin, was that you?
Yes. I have a very important question. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Well, now we can hear you. We were having trouble. I was having trouble.
As someone who just learned about the Christmas, can you hear me? I was saying I have a very.
You're now muted.
Okay. Are we good?
Now you're good.
Okay. I was saying as someone who just learned what the Christmas pickle was all about, I think that it's wrong of me not to know what is anyone able to answer that question? Get me?
I don't think we heard your question. What? Christmas?
No. Why is pickleball called pickleball?
Oh,
why is it called?
Why, Luke? Why is pickleball not called John Ball or Luke Ball? Luke? Luke is now on mute.
I'll take a stab at it.
Anyone with stable.
Okay, Bill is now going to answer for us.
So the guys who invented this up in Washington State with their kids back in the 1960s, guy named it after his dog. His dog's name was Pickle, and thus pickleball.
And thus pickleball, rather than Bill Ball.
Perfect.
Okay?
Thank you.
I think
All right, so
there's two stories. That's one of them, and that's good enough.
That's how pickleball evidently got its name. At least that's the folklore around pickleball. Okay, so we will hope to see this on the agenda next time for approving location. But that will depend on Luke assembling the Parks, Forestry, and Recreation Committee so that they can take a look at it and reviewing the input, if any, that they get from neighbors. And we know that we got some input from neighbors tonight. Thank you, Isaac, for giving verbal input. So, all right, that's that agenda item. So thank you all for attending. You're certainly welcome to stay for our budget discussion, which we still have to have, and here it is, 9 o'clock. And we still have Adam's inclusivity, diversity, and equity update, which has, I believe, probably taken a back seat lately to budget discussions.
A little bit, but we've been working on some items. So obviously, yeah, just to give a quick recap so we can head into the budget discussions. So, you know, Council President Doss I continue to review kind of the Inclusivity Diversity Task Force. What she has kind of been tasked with is thinking about drafting a version of kind of an application or nomination form. And then some of the things we continue to kind of monitor and gain questions on are, you know, do we actively try to recruit members, or do we try to kind of leave it open-ended and see who responds? I have received interest, obviously, from UW Platteville, as well as the Platteville Chamber of Commerce that definitely would be very interested in being a part of that committee. So that's something that, you know, we will continue to kind of move on, as obviously in 2021, one of our strategic initiative goals is to actually create that committee and start having meetings. Number two is Jamie Collins, obviously with the Southwest Rainbow Alliance, and I met in August and have kind of been going back and forth about the potential of doing a 60-minute Zoom session on a variety of topics. So we have now been able to pencil in 2 dates. There is going to be a January 13th, 2020 session for department heads, which obviously council members would be more than welcome to attend, but understanding with kind of schedules and knowing that, you know, people work and people have different things going on and you're all busy. We tentatively have also scheduled January 26th to be a work session specifically for the Common Council to be from 6 to 7 p.m. So I'll be working with Jamie on kind of getting some more of the specifics and information flyers so that we can send that out so you can get an idea of what those are going to entail. And then the last kind of update I have is I met with Frank King from UW Platteville and then also Max Long with the Platteville School District. And what we have discussed doing is creating what's going to be called a bias reporting discussion or team, which now is going to meet monthly. And essentially it's going to be our 3 entities, the school district, the university, and the city, reviewing kind of bias incident reports. So kind of looking at common trends between, incidents that are occurring at the school, the university, and have a city impact, and kind of reviewing, what we can do to try to improve some of those incidents and look into the data and reporting. So right now it's definitely going to be myself and the chief of police are going to be attending from the city. If there is any council member that would be interested in being a part of that, please let me know, and I will kind of let you know when those meetings are going to occur in time. They haven't been officially set, but obviously we're going to be looking at kind of doing those monthly for sure. So any council member definitely would be welcome, and those are going to be ongoing discussions. So that's the latest information I have.
Okay, so that's concluding the information and discussion section. You will be seeing from me a suggestion that people submit a letter of interest in joining this task force. Like Adam said, we've discussed, do we go out and actively recruit? Well, if you actively recruit, then some people would say it's biased from the beginning because you've now selected who you have on your task force. So we kind of came up with the fact that we would request letters of interest from people and move from there. So we'll see. Frankly, I believe that's going to take all of our actions to get people to submit letters of interest. They aren't going to have to be long, but we're going to have to kind of actively promote. And speaking of active promotion, if you have any ideas of who might want to serve on Parks and Rec, I have a couple of invitations out, but after 2 or 3 days when they don't respond, I start to believe that they don't answer my phone call, they don't answer my text, and they don't answer my email, that maybe that's the answer. So if you have any suggestions, please let me know. And now I guess we'll move on into the work session. Everyone, I believe, today should have gotten a new copy or a revised copy, a copy of the budget that's been revised. And Ken, the copy delivered to me today had page numbers. Thank you. Nicola, was that you? She's not on anymore.
She's here.
She's
Oh,
here?
really? Did you think I would ditch you for the budget at the end? No, I'm here.
Okay.
Yes, thanks to Debbie for her help in compiling the budget book and putting page numbers on there.
Okay, so the first thing, I guess, is that Adam sent a memo to us on the 23rd, last Friday, detailing some of the some of what he heard and a response to that. So do you want to start with something, Adam, and then we'll move through again?
Yeah, so certainly, I can obviously bring the memo up if everybody needs to see it, but I think I'll just go over the highlights so that way, sometimes it's hard with Zoom to kind of do that. But, obviously, as we all know, 2020 has been a year of unprecedented kind of events and it continues to be a struggle for staff and a struggle for everybody in trying to deal with this. So number one, I want to give hats off to both, the staff and obviously, all of you as council members. I know Zoom, especially during a budget, I think we'd all like to be together in a room looking at, data. So I appreciate, kind of how we're hammering through kind of a new process. And also as the new city manager, I'm learning what the previous budget process was and kind of trying to figure out, there's definitely some things that, Nicola and I have talked about implementations that I would like to try to make next year to make this process a little bit more seamless and a little bit more easier. But, so obviously the budget that we presented last week was kind of the first ditch or the first effort to kind of look at where everything is falling. So what you saw in the last budget was obviously, an indication of a 3.2% increase, which resulted in about 25 cents being added to the tax roll. There were a lot of concerns voiced about, and rightfully so, about in the current climate that we're in, having residents be able to handle that kind of a burden. And also, we did hear concerns, and I've heard concerns from council members about, still looking at exceeding our, our capital improvement kind of debt limit that we've set, where we only will, borrow the amount of money that we have paid off. And I think one of the things you'll notice in the budget is obviously, it's showing about a 25% increase. And a lot of that has to do really with the capital improvement plan. That is the main reason for that increase, is because a lot of the projects that are in there are kind of one-time grant funded projects that normally don't occur. So you've got Business Highway 151 in there. We have the potential now of the roof being a part of that. And then also there's obviously the normal consideration of the projects that we do try to do in a year with street projects. So there's some unique caveats obviously in this budget that haven't been there before. Obviously COVID-19, as we've talked about, has impacted our budget. So really the two things that we want to try to accomplish tonight out of this work session is to get kind of a consensus from the council on a comfort level of where the tax rate increase percentage can be. I think, right now what we're showing is we have been able to go back and kind of sharpen our pencil and look at everything and get some, increased information. So we're at about a 1.7% increase is what we're showing in the new updated document. So what that equates to is obviously as staff, we went back and took into account, everybody is dealing with something in COVID, with COVID-19. So any type of increase we make, we do understand trying to make that as minimal as possible, so that obviously, we never want to raise taxes, but with trying to put everything in and also trying to accomplish keeping the tax rate as low as possible, but also focusing on continuing to move the city in a forward direction and addressing some of the strategic plan items. This is where the new kind of updated budget lies. So what we're showing is essentially a 1.7% increase in the assessed rate. So currently the tax rate is at $7.88. So the new proposal would be to have the tax rate go to $8.02. So that's about a 14-cent increase, obviously, in the tax rate. So how that impacts a potential homeowner is that somebody that would have a $150,000 home paid about $1,182 in taxes. Under the new 2020 proposed rate, they would pay $1,203. So roughly a $20 increase, which essentially equates to about $1.75 a month. So, city staff has yet to receive the 2020 finalized statement of assessment from the Wisconsin Department of Revenue. But definitely conservatively is estimating that we will be able to maintain a proposed assessed rate increase under 2%. So obviously some of the things that we've looked at in regards to the staffing impacts that we've talked about is there's really kind of three positions or three areas that staffing was focused in the 2021 budget. So number one, obviously, is a 1% wage increase for all city staff members. So that is actually a reduction from where we were before. So we went back and we looked at the history a little bit of what we've done in the past. And I think this was even a question that Kathy had kind of indicated was, looking at the history, what typically has been some of the increases that have occurred. And it's been kind of a mix of differences. So there's been a 1% increase that occurred in 2016, and that was kind of in line with the implementation of the compensation plan. So in 2017, there was not an increase at all. So it was kept flat. And then in 2018 and 19, there were 2%. I think 2018 was 1%, and then 2019 and 2020 were 2%. So obviously in 2021, with everything and kind of understanding the current climate, we have now changed that to be a 1% wage increase, which is approximately equates to about $25,000 that would affect. Then there are essentially three kind of areas that we focused. One was the creation of what is called a human resource specialist position. And that's something, since obviously I've been here now and onboarding now for the last 10 months, have kind of heard from a lot of different people in regards to having a dedicated HR person on staff that would be able to kind of be the central contact person for a lot of the issues with our insurance, kind of insurance monitoring and management, the onboarding, a lot of obviously handling questions about FMLA and different releases, and how that position would be able to free up some flexibility where currently a lot of the HR duties are spread throughout the entire city. So what our hope with this is by creating this position, it will be able to free up department heads and specifically some of our finance staff time to focus really on some of the strategic planning items that we have put into effect over the next 3 years. The other one obviously is the communications specialist position. That is one right now that is a 30-hour per week position. And kind of, again, trying to continue to move the city forward. We have identified in the strategic plan, the need to really increase our marketing of the city as far as telling our story, also focusing on history. So that has been the discussion of having that position become a full-time position. So that has been added to the budget. And then obviously building on the strategic plan for the museum, there's been numerous meetings that I've had with the executive director about wanting to improve or have the ability to have staff work on various projects that are directly related towards the strategic plan, and being able to deal with kind of collections management, offering new kind of, museum exhibits and diagrams and offerings, just increased programming to really kind of promote the museum. So those obviously are the positions that, or the changes that have kind of been made for staffing impacts. So what we did as far as the update from the last budget to this budget to get there was a couple of changes. Obviously, number one, there was the museum error that was found where there was about $14,544 that was allocated under museum seasonal, which was technically a grant position that was, unfortunately somehow, one of the issues that we're trying to deal with our spreadsheets is if there's a formula error, it sometimes gets kind of, transplanted into the spreadsheets. So that was removed, which obviously caused a reduction in the overall tax rate, that was, or levy that was needed. Some of the other things that we looked at then obviously is to assist the museum. Within the CIP, there was $30,000 that was projected to be utilized to improve the kind of City Hall exterior. What we looked at doing is essentially now is having that project be, transferred over the next 2 years. So instead of $30,000, it was reduced to 15, and that $15,000 that was in the CIP was moved into the museum seasonal line item to cover basically the ability for the museum director to allocate additional hours to go towards a variety of positions, as we discussed, that would help towards the strategic plan. Then another thing that was done is looking at kind of having some better, more months of actual history data. We felt that comfortable that we would be able to increase the general fund interest revenue by $15,000. And really that was because looking at it, in reviewing the current year estimates, we were already forecasted to exceed the amounts we originally projected in the first draft of our budget. So we anticipate that approval of the staffing proposals would create capacity, which would allow staff to obviously pursue interest revenue opportunities and increase that. So I guess the first thing I'd like to focus on is, before we kind of get into the capital improvement section of the budget, are there any kind of questions or comments or additional clarification that is needed about kind of how we got to the 1.7 that you're seeing now in your updated packet?
Okay, questions or comments? This would be on basically operational activities.
Correct.
Rather than CIP activities. Ken?
Well, I looked through the whole budget, and I would comment about $30,000, 15 for the repair to City Hall. I would favor the usage of 15,000 for the museum. I'm assuming that the repair of City Hall, I've read or heard that part of the stones have been removed as far as repairing City Hall. I assume City Hall is not leaking versus museum. We need to have money going toward roofing. So also I'm for the roofing for the museum. As far as the HR person, I gave my comments last time. I think one thing on HR, I think there needs to be a good PR as far as what the HR person is going to mean to the city of Platteville as far as benefits to the city of Platteville. I think just to come out and say we hired another person at $62,000, when some people don't have jobs, don't have good paying jobs, that is what I called last time a hard sell. So thank you.
Okay, Kathy.
Okay, are we just talking about the capital improvement funding at this point?
We're
Or-
not talking about capital improvement funding. We're talking
It's-
about the other funding. So we would be talking about staffing. So the HR specialist, the communication specialist, the additional hours for the museum. We would be talking about decreasing the original wage increase, I think was 1.5%. So decreasing that, if 1% is $25,000, then 1.5% must have been 37.5.
It was 45,000, yeah. So it was a decrease of about $20,000.
Yeah. All right. I appreciate everybody going back and taking second looks at the proposed budget. I still have a concern. While I even see the rate for 2021 is going up, would go up slightly. It's still, I think, going to be a difficult sell. And I probably shouldn't even say it that way. It's hard because I've talked to community people. Well, they've reached out to me. I haven't gone out to do this, but they're very concerned about any type of tax increase. And I look at, and I know I brought this up before, the fact that this has been a crazy year. We really don't know what next year is going to look like. And I think, Barb, you made the comment at our last meeting that as far as shared revenues, we don't know what 2021 could possibly look like. That I'm really struggling with any kind of an increase, and when it came out after our last meeting, I believe somebody said they heard it on the radio that we're looking at raising taxes and hiring more people. And they're saying, the comment came back to me, what are you guys thinking about? So it's a tough situation to be in right now. And I want us to be very conscientious as we're moving through this process, that a big part of our strategic plan is our eye to be on the fire station. So given that you know, people are, a lot of people in our community are really struggling right now. We don't know, I know for a fact that there are several businesses that I know that I know are hurting very significantly. So for the city, for us to say that we need more things, so we're going to have to raise your taxes, I just really don't think this is the year to do that. And I guess my point with, I have a lot of admiration for the city staff and what they do, but I guess I would like to have some discussion on not adding to staff at all for 2021. Give it a year. Let's see how, and I hope nobody takes it personally, because that is not the intent. I'm looking at the bottom line. So if we're able to keep the end result flat and try to hang in there with additional staffing, till next year, we will have the full results of this horrid 2020 behind us. We will have a better idea of what 2021 has looked like, and we might be in a much better position a year from now. So that's my comments.
Isaac.
On this particular section of the budget, so I've talked with, again, kind of what Kathy has stated and also with Ken, is, some people are questioning, this is just this part of what we're discussing here, are questioning of the, some people do not have jobs, or, hoping that they don't lose their jobs. They're struggling as it is, but yet now we want to add more employees or additional hours to there, which possibly would increase the taxes. So I've heard that side, but then I also look at it and thinking, here's the city that's, trying to help out and add a position, create a job, raise one of the hours to a full-time to give more additional income. So it kind of works both ways here. I do agree with Kathy on, and echo her statements about, the shared revenue portion of it. And same with what Ken is stating, that, could be, as he states, a hard sell to some people. So this one, this one's kind of a, up in the air for me on this one here on what to do, or, what to state. But, again, it's something that staff has worked on. And I truly feel that, we have a great staff, and they feel that in the long run, not this year, but in the long run, that it will save us money, saving from the overtime. You don't have to go with their feeling and their gut on this one. So, I would support the staff's opinion on, and the direction on adding a human resources position full-time possibly, then also changing the other position from a part-time to full-time. So, and again, I'm looking at it as not what it's going to cost this year, but what I think it could save us in the long run of other dollars in the long run. So.
Okay, Robin.
Well, I think Isaac spoke to what I was feeling more eloquently than I was ready to say. So I think that really difficult, hard to swallow piece is adding a position, but it's a position that I assume most people assume we already have. And here staff has been kind of just patching it together, making it happen. And I get increased in wages to kind of help soften the blow, which means that it really kind of boiled down to pitting choices against choices that were in the same category. To my understanding, kind of feels like if we all look at what's going to make City Hall run more smoothly, it sounds like staff are willing to make some sacrifices to make that run more smoothly. Does anyone? I see faces like my internet's unstable again. Am I okay? And then I just spoke to Adam. No, I don't even hear anyone. That's my problem.
We hear
you. Can hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I did speak to Adam some about, what my thoughts were after looking through it more thoroughly. And it really did kind of boil down to there's suggestions we could throw at this, but we give some autonomy to staff, and if we want to give them a ultimatum that we need to lower the amount, maybe there's places they can pinch, but not in places they're comfortable. I think so. When I went through it, I guess I was looking at some of the like outlay budgets, just some of that more discretionary, maybe even like copy machine budgets, those things that really, it's hard. You're just pushing those down to next year or the year after, and it doesn't look like our budgets are going to get any easier to make these decisions. So I think we just need to go forward where we're at, and see what we get for next year. So, hard to boil it down to, but
oh, maybe just a minute. Anything else, Robin?
No, I can't think of what my other thought was. I think it's just when we get into the capital conversation. So I'm good for now.
Jason?
Yeah, I kind of agree with a lot of what's being said already. I think, in terms of the positions, as Isaac was saying, is it something where, if we can look at it long term, is it going to help things run a little bit more efficiently? Is it going to, yeah, right now, immediately, unfortunately, we're looking at a potential tax increase. But again, to look, down the road, is this going to, end up helping us run more efficiently and potentially, maybe even save some money down the road. And I'm also, I appreciate the efforts to lower the percentage too, because I think last time we were looking at, something in terms of like over 3% of a potential tax raise. And I was feeling pretty anxious after the last meeting when, especially when we were asked to kind of think about it a little bit more. 3%, that's a pretty big hike. And, getting it back, down to the 1.77% still, again, like some people were saying, any tax raise, especially in this situation, is going to be, tough. But I think, when I saw that 1.77 compared to the potential, like I said, over 3%, I had, that was a little bit of a relief for me in terms of going about this decision. Yeah, it's hard because, it's, you want to be able to progress forward and kind of work on this stuff, especially with the strategic plan and identifying those areas. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at in terms of some of this. So,
Eileen.
I would echo some of the comments, obviously, as well. I do think that, yes, a human resource position would be a definite plus to our community. I think that we have looked at that in the past and not chosen to pursue it. I think with everything that's happened this year, with the additional responsibilities for COVID, and it's not just city employees who have faced that, everyone has, but it sort of heightens the fact that this happened and now there's so much more to do and people are trying to do more than they could do before probably, and things have been added on top of that, and rules change all the time. Somebody has to keep up with those rules, and so a dedicated human resources person, I just think that that's probably something a community our size honestly could use. So I would be in favor of pursuing that. I echo Jason. I think that, the increase in the mill rate, no one wants to hear that there's going to be an increase in the mill rate. But like any business, which is really what the city is, our expenses are going up just like everyone else's. And so you either try to keep pace or you fall behind. And once you fall behind, as I said at the last meeting, it's extremely difficult to catch up. And at some point, then you have the 3% or the 4% or the 5% tax increase. So I think it's better to prepare to do a little bit this year and maybe a little bit next year. Shared revenue will always be a problem unless we can convince the state that there should be a different way for communities to have funding. We are very, very limited in what we can do in terms of raising revenue. And that is difficult. Every year it becomes more difficult in my view. So I'm in favor of the human resources position, the communication specialist to full-time, and also some additional funding for the museum. I do think the museum is making great strides, and I would like us to be able to support that that city department at this point. I think that it's kind of a critical point to move forward.
Okay, and my input is similar. Yes, this human resource position has been talked about over the years, and I can't, having been a human resource generalist in a business for a part of my career in an earlier time, I can only imagine the questions, the everything that's going on with leaves and rearranged schedules and everything else as it is with COVID. I mean, I think, I can't even imagine trying to manage that, and then insurance questions that are arising in addition. So while I don't like it, I do have a question. I am expecting, although we haven't talked about it specifically, that this budget proposal meets the criteria that allow us to continue to receive the monies from the expenditure restraint program.
Yes, it does. And in fact, I'm glad you brought that up. We do have to navigate this balance in this difficult time as far as, having any kind of a tax increase. But one of the warnings that we received from our municipal advisors from Alice during the long-range financial plan a year or two ago was that if you don't have somewhat of an increase and keep up with, the consumer price index type increases, which I just found out the state has at 1.4%, eventually you will not qualify for expenditure restraint anymore, because what will happen is, as Eileen was pointing out, you get behind, and then you have to have a larger increase in one particular year, and then you won't qualify for the expenditure restraint. And that's when you lose out on $120,000 worth of funding. So I think they had advised us it was important that we try to keep up at least with a little bit of increase each year for that reason.
Okay. Adam and Nicola and any other department head, I am assuming that you have looked at these trust accounts, for instance, those dedicated to the cemetery, those dedicated to parks, and that you have utilized funding as might be available from those various accounts to assist. I think about the $20,000 resurfacing of the tennis courts. I think, we have monies in accounts. I think of the additions of campground. I think of some of these things. So people have left us money for this type of rainy day. And I'm wondering and hoping that all of those accounts have been thoroughly reviewed, and application of any available funding from those has been applied.
Yes, and I think that's the continual kind of monitoring of this budget that we continue to do. So obviously, when we get to the point where the budget, becomes the public hearing and goes through the final stages, by that point, we are aware of what the statement of assessment is. So, there are still some opportunities that we feel, again, that this budget is conservative, and that's happened in years past where I think for some of the new council members, you may not have seen that, but some of the old ones where you'll notice, as you go through the budget process, the proposed, increase that they talked about was actually reduced because of the fact that the statement of assessment comes in and is conservative. We are basing our assessment to be extremely conservative, with the hopes that obviously when it comes in, it's going to reduce that 1.7 even further. But that's where, this doesn't stop after tonight. It's something that, Nicola and I and the staff, we continue to kind of monitor until what we call is, D-Day, which is that document has to go out to the press. As far as the official public hearing, we continue to monitor kind of all of the funds and look at different opportunities and different ways that, we can budget. Because just actually to that point, if we find out there is a change that would go in a different direction, then we as staff obviously have to come up with, that's where we start having the conversations that I've talked to some of you about, where then those contingency funds that we have, those are the first things that get cut. Is, we get to that number that, we have a consensus from the council as to, we can't exceed this cap. So then it's our due diligence as city staff to make sure that wherever we go from this point, we're not exceeding that. So you will not see a budget that will go over that amount.
All right, so I guess that while I've heard concern. I've heard number one, Adam, Nicola, and whoever else. We need more for the public. We need a better understanding of how investing in a human resource person is going to move the city forward. I mean, you can look at employees as an expense. You can look at employees as an investment. So I guess that as you're looking forward, that really what we need to know is how making this investment is going to bring any kind of change. I mean, I think it's pretty, it's easier for us to see how making an additional investment of 8 hours in the city communication director and having increased expectations as to what that means.
Right.
That may be easier for us to see than what investing in a human resource, for lack of a better word, generalist is going to do for the city. And so I guess we need some, as we move forward, that's important to show what that investment will result in terms of addition for the city.
Barb, one more thing here, if I could. And I got to add on what Robin had said as well. Talking with some people, quite a few people, as Robin stated, were quite surprised that a city like Platteville doesn't already have a person that's dedicated towards human resources. Ended up having a couple of them ask me then, well, who's doing that job? And I guess my short answer was a little bit of everybody.
Everybody's doing it.
So I just wanted to bring that up as well, that, people are really surprised that we don't have this, when we keep saying, well, we're a city of this size, we have this many people, but yet you don't have a human resources person. So that's it.
If I could maybe just, address what does this yield to the city in a couple of places. So for example, we have some aspects of HR that are done by the payroll person, some aspects that are done by the financial operations manager, some that are done by staff in the city clerk's department, some by me, some by Adam. And what tends to happen, for one, when you spread things out, especially as I'm sure many of you are aware that HR issues can be sensitive, and there's a lot of complex law behind how we implement HR amongst for our staff, for our employees. And if we get it wrong, if sometimes we are giving two different messages on the same subject, we've got different people involved in maybe using different sources for their information, so the employee themselves is not getting the same answer when they have a question. And sometimes this is when they're in a situation of trauma, they're going through a surgery or something, and they need to understand. And so we want to try to consolidate into one person who is the expert and who can give the same answer to the questions that employees have. But the other implications of that is it means that people that, while we're always willing to pitch in, if this position was not approved, I mean, we would continue to do what we're doing, but it does distract some folks away from their primary purposes. And there are things that I would like to see our finance department be able to tackle to do some of that deep diving on all of our trust funds, making sure that we're utilizing all of our budgeted funds, looking at CIP during the year and being able to provide updates, for example, to the Water Sewer Commission or to the council on, this is what we budgeted for CIP projects. This is what are we actually spending? We don't really have that right now. And those are some of the initiatives that we would like to pursue to make sure that we're being good stewards of the resources that the taxpayers are providing to us. So it just gives you a snapshot of a couple of places where I think that will be a good investment for the city.
Oh, sorry, Ken. I will make sure that a memo is put together. I'll work with the staff because I think that's one of the things that I'm hearing that the council would really like is kind of a memo that specifically hits this topic and dedicates, with this position, here are the, bucket list items that we feel will open up and potentially lead to savings and, some of the reasons for it. So I think Nicola did a bang up job there of kind of hitting the highlights, but I'll make sure that we get something out.
Okay, Ken, you have your hand waving.
Yes. Why does the position have to be full-time? What about a half-time person?
The concern I see with a halftime position is that HR issues kind of occur, especially, and sometimes with HR, the response needs to be, I guess for lack of a better word, quick. It has to be timely. So the only issue I would see with a part-time position is that if they're only, whether they're, working 4 hours in the morning or 4 hours in the afternoon, that potentially causes, issues there. I don't know how much that would alleviate, the concern of what we're trying to do with getting a dedicated person to be that answer, because then what we're doing is either we're delaying that response till that person comes back in, or then that's putting it back again on kind of what we've been doing currently, where somebody else is taking the ball with that and running, and it may not be the same opinion as the HR specialist. So I think that's when we looked at it. There, we talked about a part-time position, but with the amount of kind of work that is invested in that role, it's hard to have a part-time person.
Well, I think it would be a good answer.
Okay.
You want the whole thing. I don't think that necessarily is the best way to go.
So Adam, are you looking for consensus on the 1.79?
Yeah, I think right now we're at 1.77. So.
Or well, I don't know where the one.
Yeah.
Your memo said
1.79.
1.79, but.
Yeah, that was in the memo. I think the most recent we're at is 1.77. So yes, I think the consensus we're looking for from a staff is if there is agreement to move forward with, where we're currently standing, which is the 1.77.
What does
Okay, and so I guess I would.
Give us?
So that would be an assessed tax rate right now of $8.02. So roughly that's about a 14-cent increase over the previous year.
Are we deciding on a full-time HR person?
At this point in time, we're looking at this proposal include the 1.77% increase includes a full-time HR person, 8 hours for the communication specialist, taking that position to full-time. It includes money in the museum budget that has been moved from some other budget to add time for the collections management and museum assistant positions. And it includes a 1% wage increase for all city staff. I believe I've got that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what that is what we would get for another, if you have a $200,000 home assessed value, for another $2.35 a month, which by the way is less than a cup of coffee. You would be getting a full-time HR person, additional hours for the communication specialist, a 1% raise for all city staff, and additional hours allocated to the museum.
Can I ask Adam another question quick?
Sure.
Okay. Adam, I know in the past we've talked about like how in the city of Platteville, for some people, there seems to be this perception that, Platteville's taxes are outrageously high, that type of thing. But then, I think you had provided us with the breakdown at one of the meetings in terms of, comparable communities were kind of in the middle in terms of where our taxes are. And I wonder, if we can, in terms of, again, being more like transparent and being, explaining these things a little bit more to the public in terms of what the reality is. I wonder if that piece might be helpful to include with all of this. Again, just to kind of, show exactly where we do sit, and, and in comparison to some other similar sized communities.
Yeah, so I think that is definitely something that when we go into the kind of finalized budget presentation, when we present the budget, we can include that information so they can see. I did do some quick analysis kind of before the meeting of just seeing where a lot of other municipalities are, and they are all kind of in very similar. Now, granted, their tax rates are different, but as far as the overall kind of tax increase percentage they're looking at, it runs the gamut. I mean, there are some that are, Sheboygan's at about 1.49. Obviously, they're much bigger than us, but, City of Oshkosh, which is another one of our university municipalities, they're at a 2.98% increase, or about 22 cents. So, the city of New Berlin's at about 15 cents. So that's all the information we certainly would include when we get to that budget hearing, because we anticipate that that's going to be a question when you're talking about that general comparables. Where does this put us?
Okay, so the question is we've gone from 3 point whatever to 1.77, which is about half of, well, not quite half of where it was before. Are we comfortable moving forward with this? I, for one, am. So I'll start out by saying I'm comfortable moving forward with this as it is.
I am also comfortable at this time moving forward with where things are at right now.
I'm comfortable with moving forward with things as they are now as well.
I am also.
Me too.
Robin said me too, I think. Kathy and Ken?
I'm comfortable with moving forward, but not with a full-time HR. I haven't been sold on it yet. You need to sell the public.
Okay.
We're going to say they're going to wonder how hard you're working, and that's going to be what I consider the tough sell.
Okay. And Adam has indicated he will provide a memo that provides more details about that. So, Kathy?
Okay, I'm going to be the Lone Ranger. I still think that I would like to see if there's not a way that, okay, if the staffing issue is something that everybody else feels very strongly about. I come from a background where for over 2 decades, I ran an organization. If you didn't have the money, you didn't spend it. And we were still able to get a lot done. We had a very successful plan. I just wish there was a way for, given everything, if the city could come out, drop that rate even lower and say, we've come up with this fantastic, I mean, we've worked hard, staff has worked hard, the council is backing this. We're going to be doing ABC, this is the reason for it, but we still are being very responsible with tax dollars. So we have decided to eliminate or cut ABC. Do we have anything like that we can say? What are we willing to really cut? I mean, the CIP is really up there, but I agree with that. I just wish there was some other piece that we could come up with to drop that somehow, so that we could at least say we are making a concession by doing this.
Well, there are departments that have significant reductions this year compared to last year. So those departments, I believe, have made significant changes. But in terms of the council's saying, no, we're not going to do A, B, or C. But I think if Nicola and Adam with the department heads look, there are some budgets that have fallen considerably. And so perhaps Adam and Nicola and department heads that are on here, you can tell us where those are. Because I think from what Adam has said in terms of meeting with department heads, I think that they have been pretty well told no increase. And in fact, there have been many departments where the increases are very minimal, or in fact, non-existent. So Adam, you hear that. So let's go on to a discussion then of, we still have the CIP to discuss.
Yeah, so with the CIP, obviously, as you can see in the kind of memo that I sent you, I heard from a couple of different kind of council members just wanting to have a further discussion about, particularly the borrowing that's on the table, and just go over, again, options and considerations. So what you'll remember in our CIP is that the current policy that we have is this goes in effect with essentially what's been created in our long-range financial plan, is that we historically have only borrowed the amount of principal that we have paid off in the prior year. So going into 2020, obviously, we paid off a principal balance of $1,240,000. So some of the questions, obviously, that came up was with this year, we have a unique project that it doesn't always happen, and that's Business Highway 151. And I think where, you'll notice if you look at the overall budget, it's indicating about a 25% increase over the previous year. And the majority of that is because of the capital improvement fund. You can see that pretty much within the data that's in there. That historically, that capital improvement fund that CIP has been roughly about $2.5 million or $3 million. Whereas in 2021, we're anticipating to look at having a CIP of 6.5. And a lot of that has to do really with some of the grant funded opportunities that are out there in conjunction with, the fact that we are still obviously trying to improve our roads and stay steady with reducing that time frame that we have. So what I kind of threw together was just some options, and this I might actually share just so you can see it. Let me pull it up here. Try to share my screen. Where is it? Here we go. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so essentially what I've laid out are kind of basically, kind of 5 different options that are on the table. So option 1 is essentially what we have discussed as a city and as a council over the last couple of meetings. And that is to essentially include $75,000 to be borrowed to do the Deborah Court Storm Sewer Ditch, the Business Highway 151, which is the $810,488. And just to remind everybody, by doing that project, we essentially are getting $1.4 million in DOT grant funds to cover the remainder. Then there obviously is the 2021 street repair project of Dewey Street, which is $1.2 million, which brings the total borrowing to about roughly a little over $2 million. Well, as you can see, with the 2020 principal that we were expected to pay off in 2020, this puts our borrowing over our normal amount by $845,000. So some of the questions obviously have been, if we stuck to our $1.2 million principal paid off, what are some options essentially to kind of work with the capital improvement plan? So one scenario would be obviously that you could fund the $75,000 for Deborah Court, you would fund the Business Highway 151 project, and essentially delay Dewey Street until 2022, which would bring your total borrowing to about $885,000, leaving somewhat of a surplus of $354,000 that could be earmarked and moved towards 2022 to go towards Dewey Street. So that's one option. Another option to consider would essentially be funding Deborah Court at $75,000, the complete Business Highway 151, and then this amount that we essentially had earmarked, we could work with, Howard and also, Delta 3 Engineering and do a portion of Dewey Street that would be up to that amount. And that would keep you at the 1.2, borrowing amount. Another scenario essentially would be to not do Deborah Court, do Business Highway 151, and then do a portion of Dewey Street to get you to the $1.2 million. Or there's another scenario, which would be to fund Business Highway 151 and just Dewey Street, which would be $2 million, essentially being about 770 over our borrowing plan. So again, I think just another thing that staff is looking for is just a consensus from the council in regards to just really solidifying what CIP borrowing that we want to move forward with as a city.
Can I ask a more general question?
Robin.
Can you speak to like a 5-year trend in this not borrowing more than what we, what's the word we just used? Retired.
Retire.
Have we been on a downward trend, or has it kind of stayed at the same number?
Adam, did you hear that question, or Nicola?
Yeah. Does anyone have the ability to speak?
So,
Well,
it just seems like an interesting policy that could kind of build on itself.
Right.
Keep us at a
So ultimately, if you keep paying off your debts and then you only borrow what you pay off, and you're eventually going to run out of borrow. You won't be able to borrow anymore. I mean, long term. So, it was a policy that was introduced during the 2016 budget cycle and the long range financial plan. That was the first financial plan that the city undertook, and it was an intense process with several work sessions with the council and ALAs. And at that time, the city was facing a severe struggle.
Crisis.
Well, crisis. Yeah, I would disagree. There wasn't quite a crisis, but it certainly was a serious financial challenge that the city had to address related to debt service. And so the simple answer, Robin, to the question is that I don't have it in front of me, but the amount of principal that was being paid off in those first few years was larger than the amount that we're paying off now. So it has had the impact of constraining the street reconstruction because the amount that we're paying off now is a little bit less. I'd also say that I think that policy is still important for the city, at least for a couple more years, while we continue to pay off some of those larger debt service loads. But as we look forward, we can see, and we saw this in the long range financial plan when Ella's presented it to us about a month or so ago, that once we get past like the next couple, 3 years, then our borrowing and our debt repayment is spread out more and has flattened out. Plus, we're also benefiting from the low interest rates over the last couple of years. And so then I think it's something that the council could consider as part of the updating the long range financial plan, whether the council wants to change that internal policy in light of the new information. But of course, as we've talked about and as we included in the plan, there is the potential for funding a fire facility sometime in the future. And we had Ella's time that according to when they felt that it was something that would not have too negative an impact on our tax rates. And I believe that was at about 2026, if I'm not mistaken. So obviously, if we were to finance a fire station with borrowing, at that point, we'd definitely be going beyond the levy supported principal that was paid off in the previous year.
And Nicola, it would be, the other thing you would say is that Ellers was able to pull in the fire station at that time because of restraint in borrowing and paying down debt until that time.
True, yes. It was based on the assumption that we would not borrow more than the levy supported principal retired the previous year.
So that we could work into being able to have enough latitude to be able to borrow upwards of probably 5 to 6 million for a fire station.
And I should be clear and also say that if we look back at the financial plan, you'll see that even with the constraint on borrowing now, the fire facility of, I think we used 5 million, which was just a placeholder dollar figure that was not based on anything. But we had to start with something. So that number, which may be way more, way less than what might be being proposed, would still have a significant impact on the debt service portion of the tax rate. And so, you know, as we would draw nearer to that, I know that the proposal is going to include other potential sources of funding, which the council would have to consider.
I have a question.
Okay,
For
Ken?
Howard Crowfoot, the $354,512, what would that include for Dewey Street?
I have not looked at a full budget on that, but it'd probably get us a block and a half maybe.
What are we replacing water and sewer?
Yes, but that's not part of this budget. That's part of the water and sewer budget.
So this 354 is
curb and gutter, sidewalk.
Storm sewer and street?
Yes, it would include storm sewer. Like I say, this would probably get us a block and a half.
Well, I favor including Deborah Court, so that's option 1, 2, or 3.
Kathy?
I guess I have a question about option 3. With the my comfort level is definitely changing to reduce what we originally talked about. But if we would move ahead with Dewey Street for the 354, does that mean, Howard, that the other section of Dewey Street would be our priority for 2022, possibly?
Yes, I would recommend that the rest of it be done in 2022. You know, that would end up pushing all the other recommended street projects pretty much another year after that.
Can I ask why there's not, your option 5 and 4 are flip-flopped around? Why is there not an option 6 that includes half a Dewey and Deborah Court?
Well, you can just add.
Right.
There is half a Dewey and Deborah Court. That's option 3.
No, I think option 3 takes from half of Dewey and adds Deborah Court to keep the number at the 1240. But we can go over that 1240. We just don't have to go as much if we just split Dewey in half.
So Robin, you're saying 600,000, right? Because Dewey is 1,200,000. So if you want half of that?
Yes. I mean, I don't know why we chose the 429. I think that was just to keep us at our
Correct.
desired. And there's nothing that says we can't just go a little over debt retired versus
I think we'd be
full
144,000.
away, right?
Correct. No, these
So,
options were just to keep you at the 1.24. That certainly, Robin, is a consideration that you can make, is that if you wanted to fund, half of, if you wanted to take option 3 and essentially have this be half, you're correct. You're going to go over by, an additional amount.
okay, so this is the CIP borrowing part.
Correct.
Is there anything in the tax levy part that's now reduced to 664,185?
So the
I mean, that
only,
would be on pages 56 and 57. We're looking at just these 3 projects. But, if we could fund Deborah Court storm sewer out of tax levy rather than city borrowing and cut 75 from those items, I guess then we would be down to the original 2 million, whatever it was, 2,010,488. So I don't know if there's anything, and as you look down there, I mean, you've already taken 15 from the City Hall exterior maintenance. We have the campground, dairy days shed improvement. I mean, do we need to do some of these things? The tennis court resurface, which is actually 22 with 3,000 for the trail at Mound View Park. Is there anything on this list that we should be looking at again? I mean, it's one thing to look at these 3 things, but there's a whole lot of more CIP projects than these 3 things.
Well, I think, Barb, you mentioned the Dairy Days building, and from what I read, I don't think there was anything wrong with the siding. The roof is leaking, so I think the 6,000 for the roof, I would prefer it stays there. I don't know if we need the 6,000 for the siding. I don't know if we can reduce the police car, squad car from 50,000 to maybe 45. I guess it just depends on how much we're trying to come up with.
I'm trying to come up with 75 grand. That's what I'm trying to come up with.
Looking at these, the budget in the past year, as you said, like 57 and 56, those pages, again, we just complimented the staff on reducing their numbers as much as they have already. And all of a sudden you're instantly trying to say, well, we want you to drop 75,000 again. I'm going to kind of go in a couple of different comments, probably a couple of different people here. So the first one is the Highway 151 project is a special project.
Yep.
Any other year, that wouldn't even been considered, but all of a sudden, again, I've said before, it's hard to give up 1.2 or 1.4 million dollars. I don't have it right in front of me here.
Right.
To do that project. To do that project, which right there almost puts us over, we can't all of a sudden do that project and say, well, other streets in the city don't need to be done, because then again, like somebody else said, you're just kicking that can down the curb to the next year. So the Deborah Court, we've already kicked the can down twice for them, and that can has gotten bigger. Every year it's gotten bigger, and it's going to have to get bigger again. If all of a sudden we start saying Dewey Street's half this year, half next year, as Howard just stated, the next street gets put down another year, and then so forth goes again. We're already, I think he said, at 110-year road replacement schedule, which is terrible. It should be half that. So, and I understand about, not trying to raise the taxes, borrow anymore. But again, this is a case here where I firmly believe we need to, because all you're going to do is push it down as far as down the line, and you're going to borrow and spend more money in the future to save a few pennies this year. I would love to see us not go over the $1.24 million, but in case, I just don't think it can happen. Nicolette also stated that, if all of a sudden we don't keep up with the borrowing, then all of a sudden we're going to lose that, I can't remember the exact word that she puts it in that we get for,
Expenditure restraint.
there we go, sorry.
It's all right.
So there's a whole bunch of different aspects here that if we don't do this, it's going to cost us more money in the future other than just borrowing more. So.
Yeah, Isaac, I agree. I don't see breaking Dewey Street into two parts. I don't see not doing Dewey Street because already we've got projects that need to be done on Jefferson, that need to be done on Snowden, that need to be, so if you kick Dewey to next year, then you're just exacerbating the problem for the year after. So I don't see doing that. And you're right, the Business Highway 151 project is a big project. I think, while our capital improvement budget is $6.4 million, or actually 6.5 million if we leave all of these in, a little over that. I think the important thing to note is that almost 4 million of that is coming from sources other than us, which is actually, I mean, if you can get $4 million out of 6 million funded by somebody else, that's a pretty good, I think that's a pretty good return on your investment. I don't think you can actually invest money and get that kind of return these days, if you could ever. And yes, it does appear to drive up the total budget, but when you figure that 1.8 million is coming from a DOT grant, perhaps a CDBG closed grant, and from federal grants for the taxi and bus, and another 1.9 is coming from FAA or the Department of Aeronautics, from from other sources. I mean, really, yeah, we're talking about, a 2 million, $2.7 million really from the city, just a little over 2 million borrowed, and 664 tax levy.
Yeah, and I would agree with both Barb and Isaac, because, looking at option one, you take out 151, that basically covers that most of that 845,000 that we're going over. But again, you also can't give up like that 1.4, 1.5 million to do a really important project. So I think I'm kind of leaning towards that direction of, this is probably just going to be like one of those one-time things where we really need to take advantage of, the other funding that we're getting. And then I would also think that interest rates right now for borrowing would be pretty low as well. So yeah.
Other comments? Ken, you already said your piece. Kathy?
Nothing else.
Robin?
Nothing else right now.
Isaac?
Nope,
Jason?
that's it for today.
Eileen, so it appears that what I'm hearing is the council continues to favor its original decision of option one. Is that correct, Ken? A borrow of $2.085488 million for 3 projects.
I said I'd accept option 1, 2, or 3.
Well, I'm actually, okay, you'll accept 1, 2, or 3. Kathy?
Yeah.
How about you?
I think I'm going to stick with my original was option 1.
Okay. Robin?
I was ready to split Dewey, but I completely agree with our roads schedule being way too stretched out. That's since day one, I've been prepared to help move that, Mark. So I think we got to go with it and get Dewey done.
Okay, so option 1. Jason,
Yep, option 1.
Isaac,
Option 1.
and Eileen.
Option 1.
Okay, Adam, I say option 1, so I think we have pretty good consensus there.
Great.
So I think that at the bottom, you said council consensus to move forward with 2 items. A 2021 assessed rate projection below 2%, and you're at 177. There's still a couple of council members who need to be convinced that that's not still too high. And the 2021 capital improvement borrowing number has now been confirmed and or reconfirmed at 845,488,000 over what we our financial management plan says. Nicola, I'm assuming that you will see that this new number in terms of the borrow is worked into our financial management plan so that we can see how that will affect our future.
Right. When we do the update for the plan with Ellis, then they will wrap that in, yes.
Okay. All right. Adam, do we have other things you need?
Oh, that gives me enough to go on.
Does it give you any work to do? It's only 10:20.
Well, you know, there's always something to do, so.
All right.
That'll keep you busy?
All right. Yeah, it'll keep me up.
Well, good.
Well, I thank the staff for the hard work that you do on trying to hold the line. It's not easy with all of the things that come due, like increases in information technology contracts and needs to buy new servers and those kinds of things. There's just some big items that get beyond our control, I think. So thank you. And it is 10:20, and I don't believe we have further business. So I would take a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Isaac and a second by Jason to adjourn. That's what we're doing. Candace, I guess we have to vote.
Isaac,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Kopp,
Yes.
Arts,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
and Klein.
Yes.
Motion
Okay,
carries.
and thank you all for volunteering your service on behalf of the city, because that's what we are doing. And if anybody knows anybody that might help Candace out at the polls on November 3rd, I heard today, and I don't know where you are, Candace, but earlier today I heard you still needed 21 people.
That may or may not be true. I will say, as I've been sitting here, I've had quite a few emails coming in and some forms turned in, so that's good news.
That's
Are there any specific hours that need to be covered or no?
I'm not sure. Debbie was helping me fill some things in today, so to be honest with you, I'm not quite sure what is left at this point.
Okay.
But yeah, we can definitely reach out to you tomorrow if you guys are interested. We did break over at the university. We did break it down into like some 4-hour increments, just because that was easier for students and staff who were interested in being a part of it, but had classes to work around, and that's actually seemed to help. So that's a good thing. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. And don't eat too much candy on Halloween. Right?
Right.
Or do.
All right. Good night.
Good night.
Right.